Meeting in session. Welcome to everyone. For those who bared the snow and ice. Okay, how about the minutes? It was a busy meeting.
It was a very efficient meeting.
Spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, no, it was, we got a lot of ground. So I would move to approve the minutes as submitted.
I will second. All those in favor? Minutes pass. Is there anyone from the public?
Nothing in the chat online?
Let's.
Sorry.
Please, for that.
It's okay, Todd, I'm on the chat.
Whoops.
No comments on the meeting chat.
Okay,
Okay,
then no.
no one there. Oh. Well, let's head right into.
Happy New Year, all. Good to see you again. So launching right in here on schedule. No significant changes in the schedule as we see it. You know, that's something we're always evaluating and looking at. Sisters in Lapine going through final closeout, but also we are starting to implement the changes that we talked about last month, the new control systems and stuff. Those will go on for the next couple of months as we order materials and create a plan and strategy of how we implement it with minimal and no disruption to staff and operations. So that's moving right along. Sun River under construction, advancing along, progressing. Haven't had any new issues pop up this past month, so that is good. Analyzing some of our structural issues that we went through previously to see if there's really any impact. We're going to go through kind of an overall schedule evaluation throughout this month and then look at any adjustments that we need to make in February. I'll keep you apprised as how that's going. Redmond is just cranking right along. We had a good scheduled work session with Kirby Nagelhout in December and went through their construction schedule, where they're at on it and how it's going. Right now, everything's looking really good to maintain schedule. We're about almost 2/3 of the way through construction. And, you know, their completion date is the end of June, and then we started to all of our FFD and those elements. And everything from that aspect, shelving, furniture, and those all ordered and in process of production, and those items being made and purchased and getting ready to ship in this next fall. So doing well there. Stevens Ranch. So December, we had a big milestone with 95% set issued into plan check. That's for final full building permit. We actually got approval from the city on SIMP or site improvement permit in our storm drain system. So we have all of our site work permits because we previously had gotten a grading permit. And so that really lets us launch the project with those permits. Our structural permit, which is all of our foundation, is in second review. And I saw some comments come back yesterday. Pretty minor. So that looks to be tracking right in line to have that permit in March to be ready to start building late March. And so that's tracking well. We're gonna be with the closing of Stevens Ranch, the developers finalizing everything with the city on our plat map, which allows us to close on the property. So they're getting that done here this month, wrapped up so that we can close. So things seem to be moving right along. We'll talk about East Bend a little bit today, and then downtown Bend. We've been starting to have progress discussions about kicking that project off here this quarter with Miller Hall on designs. everything seems to be going well on the schedule side. From a budget standpoint, there was really no changes to the budget from the previous budget. I did add in some of the additional information we talked about last month in the report, just to make it easy for you guys to evaluate what's committed today in dollars, in percentages, as well as what's spent. So hopefully that was good, but otherwise there really was no changes to the budget. Continue to evaluate the budget as we go through with cost estimates from vendors and going through that. So didn't really have any changes there. Our contingency is holding very steady there, just under 7% overall. As far as procurement and contracts, you know, it's really getting what we presented to you last month and was approved. Those change orders or contracts were all processed and executed for that added service work or scopes of the work. We'll talk today about the GMP central library as well. I'll go through that with you. Not too much other than that. The insurance, the DSIP insurance got all extended, all that process and paperwork was completed by Brown and Brown. We got all of the updated certificates, so that's complete. Those premiums will be paid here in this funding cycle. The builder's risk insurance for Central Library is just about finalized. They'll be binding it this week as planned. I met with Brown and Brown this week. Okay, pretty much gotten everything wrapped up, and we went through a couple of questions and stuff about what the carriers were asking, the property and the location, what they want to see, and security. We put up security systems, fences, lighting. They'd like some site lighting. We only do what City of Bend allows us because of our dark skies. And so we can't have, you know, a lit ball field all night kind of aspect. They would love it to be like a shopping center out there.
Okay.
It's like, no, that's not going to happen. And so most of those things, Brown and Brown didn't feel were going to be a problem. They just had to explain to the carriers, here's what can be done, you know. So that's going along really well. You know, on Central, from a design standpoint, at this point, you know, we have the 95% that's going through. We did reviews, provided comments. We had some review sessions with the design team about what do our comments mean? What are our questions? To really work with them because this month they're working to the 100% set, which will come out at the end of the month. And that'll be most of the design effort on Central. Certain components like the furniture will continue on for a few months. We'll wrap up our shelving. That takes some really good massaging. The early learning will also kind of track closer to the furniture. They follow behind the main building. So they'll continue over the next 6 months or so to finish those. But that's proceeding really well. I don't think that there's too many big questions out there. You know, our last budgets had our design in alignment with our budgets. So that's real comforting of how we're going about this. So not too much else on that side. The developer is just cranking right along. I don't know if you got a chance to look at the different videos, but their progress is really well out there. They still intend to start building homes this year, ideally this first quarter. So when you see all of that big sea of roads and paths, that's all to start all of those homes back there. So, you know, when we are finishing up and opening Central in 2 years now, those homes are going to be built and occupied, and you know, we're going to have plenty of neighbors around us, which I think is going to be good. A lot of energy and excitement about the whole development, and so we're not going to be out there all by ourselves. So, but very good relationship with the developer. Things are going well. You know, we talk about about stuff. He, the other day said, hey, if you need some, use the adjacent lot to store your rock and dirt and stuff. He goes, I'm not gonna build on it for a while, free use. So it just, he's a cooperative kind of guy. He's excited about having the library there. And wants us to be as successful because he knows he gets a lot of benefit from that. So good relationship, you know, that's something we're always trying to build within our team, but even outside with guys like him. And so that's been very positive. Redmond, there's really, on Redmond, we're down to construction. All of our design work is complete. There's little tweaks that we have from lessons learned as we adapt and figure out what's working and what we might want to change. We make those adjustments. That has to do with things like some of the early learning, some of the shelving, some of the furniture, that kind of stuff. But we're progressing well out there, but not too much otherwise. You know, it's now just execution. Same with Sisters of Pine. We talked about that where we're at on that from a schedule standpoint. There's really no big issues there. Sun River, again, schedule is good. We're all under contract. We don't have any design issues at the moment. Made some tweaks and adjustments to our shelving and early learning to just taking from, hey, what's working, what's not. And always looking at that lessons learned and how can we benefit from that. And that what we end up building really aligns with the operational aspects of how the library is going to function. East Bend, we'll talk about that today. And we went back and reevaluated what is the right scope for that facility. What is that? And that's it. We'll go through that separately. What the scope of work came up with, what that budget would be, and see if that's in alignment with what you would like to see going forward. So we'll talk about that. And then again on downtown Bend, nothing, you know, we went through a review of our original concept drawings that we created a couple years ago and revisited them with DPL. And there was just some, it was anything that where we said, wow, we got to redo this. And I'd actually put in our schedule some time to make revisions. And as we came out of that, everybody, Miller Hall said, hey, we don't need any more time because what we're going to do is still what we planned to do 2 years ago. And so I think that was a real good testament to some good planning back then. We're making some adjustments, but it's not like, hey, we're throwing out the old thing and starting fresh. Everything that we talked about, we're just really fine tuning. Again, learning to, hey, what we do in the other places, how did Redmond has a lot of similarities, although it's a new build, but size and the function are going to be very similar. But I think our plan to begin with was very sound. So that was a good feeling that we're going to be able to kick that off this spring, move it ready to go. We are preparing the RFP for our CMGC on downtown Bend. So we'll be issuing that out this month. And it'll be a public bid, just like we have done in the past. Everything will be the same. And I anticipate coming back to you guys in March with the recommendation for selection of our CMGC for downtown Bend. We want to have them on board right away up front to work with the design team, especially in the renovations. Having a good understanding of how the existing building, we have as-built and all that kind of information, but it's also good to have a contractor engage. Yes,
CMGC is,
a construction manager general contractor.
okay, just.
Yeah. Yes. And it is something because we did an exemption on the process of how we select them at the very beginning. So definitely something before Ann was on board. And I don't remember if Bunny was on board at that time, but that was one of the very first things we did with the board back in 21. And so we're following that same process of selecting them and bringing them on. So currently we have Kirby Nagelhout, Redmond and Central, and then Sunwest Builders on the 4 branches, Sisters, Sun River, Lapine, and East Bend. So That's who we'll be bringing on. They'll just engage with the team, and we found that to be very successful in managing our costs and our budgets and helping us along so that we don't over design and then have to make a lot of cuts, and which loses you time and money always. So, that process is going to be taking place this next couple of months. From a budget finance, our cash flow is working pretty well right now. Withdrawals are going through. Everybody's getting paid timely and all that. So nothing really to speak of there. I think that process is working well. Like I said, put all of the different photos and videos into the report. It's kind of been in a summary of everything that's gone on. Any questions?
I was wondering, you mentioned in the report, you said, the team is in the process of evaluating potential challenges and planning to address the concerns for the Redmond Library. I was wondering what some of those might be.
So as we look at it, just look at, okay, how is the performance of the subcontractors going? What's going on with delivery of materials? And it's trying to anticipate. We don't have any problems at the moment, but we're talking about what could. And so it's a very proactive approach. Very happy with Kirby's approach and our collective team. What's going on out there? What could cause us to stumble? And can we prevent? So it's really can be a proactive preventive measure.
I was also wondering, in looking at the drone flight of the Central Library, what's planned directly across the street from, is that going to be houses as well? Do you know?
So straight east of us is multifamily. So it'll be 3-story apartment buildings.
Oh, okay.
And you see a lot right there. You can
Right.
see where they're grading, and then there's another street. On the other side of that is all single family.
Okay, but
Out there.
parts.
Yeah.
I
And
can
then-
tell it was a little different. So-
Yes, exactly. And to the immediate north of our line will be also some apartments. And those are the ones where the land that the developer said, hey, if you need to use this, go ahead. Because he's not quite ready to build those. So it's a family, multifamily, commercial throughout the entire domain.
On the CUGC board, we chose to remain about some less, but we didn't choose for.
No,
So neither one of those are necessarily going to be that.
they will have opportunity to propose. So we broke it into the 4 work packages for the whole one. Being central, Redmond, downtown Bend, and then we grouped branches together. And so we went out on the 3 packages. It just happened that Kirby was awarded 2 at the time. And in this case, we will put out a public notice and an advertisement. We will have an outreach. All of the generals who have contacted us in the past and expressed interest. I think we've talked about 3 or 4 of them already because we're in contact with them on a regular basis, just working with GCs on other projects. And I get phone calls and they call me and say, hey, what's going on? What's the plans? And they have access to our schedules on the website. So there's some interest out there, from our other GCs. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond back.
Anybody else here? Did you have anything?
Just kind of curious about the status of the Lapine Library and the heating issues. I know, that kind of happened over the holidays, but I think we're back on track to getting them back on schedule.
Yeah, and I've got some notes for that. I'll be presenting that as part of my overall facilities review in just a little bit.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So first item I've got up is the central library. This is the next GMP installment or amendment for Kirby Nagel. You know, as we go through, part of working with the CMGC is, and the contract form that we have with them. The benefits of a CMGC is that you can, one, they're heavily engaged throughout the pre-construction phase to work with you and evaluate designs and help cost estimate. The other is being able to go out and set up and buy parts of the project in chunks. And this is really important with long lead items, trades that we want engaged early. So as you know, we went out and we bid out a number of trades previously. This is Amendment 2. Amendment 1 captured a number of specialty contractors, our MEP subs. And so they've been engaged on the project 2 or 3 months, working with Kirby and the design team, going through, evaluating design, fine tuning adjustments, and ordering long lead materials. So our DLT, that's the acoustical wood panels that make up our floor and roof structures. Really, that's something that takes over a year to get those. And we started working on the design, Kirby did, and it's called BIM modeling, and it's a process they go through to really take the architect's design and detail it out in more fashion. And they work with all the MEP subs so that all of these planks literally have every hole drilled in them, where a pipe or a duct work or anything goes through. It's a lot of coordination and with the design team, but amongst themselves, all of those trades. And steel is another component that goes in with that. So those guys are actively marching along. And so as we evaluate our schedule and our needs on the project, we look at what trades are coming up next. So in this amendment, the major one here is the building concrete and rebar. And then a couple of other support trades like waterproofing systems and those. So those are things that we want to approve those dollars, roll it into their subcontracts so that Kirby can buy those trades out and award subcontracts. And that way, so when we want to start the building in March, we'll have the concrete sub on board with his rebar sub on board. They'll have all of their submittals and stuff, things they do with the architect to make sure that the materials they're going to use are all in accordance with the plans and specs. And it's a normal process we go through. But also the purchasing of like all of that rebar, which is the longest lead item there. Concrete we can generally get pretty readily. But rebar does take time to have it fabricated and shipped. The other thing that we do is to keep the trades that we bought early on. So especially like the MEP trades, as we complete our plans, we bring them up current to that. So if there's any changes within those plans, we bring their subcontracts up current. And that's actually identified in there in the summary where there's dollars being allocated to. Overall, we're still within our budget at the total budget of 87.5. Our contingencies within, which is a design estimating and cost escalation contingency, are both in real sound positions. We're just out approving increased dollars for each of these subs that are outlined in that summary. So that's what we're asking for, is just another piece. In talking with Kirby, we've talked about, okay, how are we going to go about the rest? So to date, we're at about a little over 50% of our GMP is under contract with Kirby, a little over 40 million of the 87. In our schedule, we had planned to do 3 amendments. That's what we did on Redmond and broke it up into 3 pieces. We may break this one up into 4. And what it has to do with is The longer we can wait on certain trades that we don't need the flooring guy and the painting guy. Some of those guys, toilet accessories for a long time. So we'll wait till we get through the 100% drawings that come out into this month. And we may even wait till after we get a round or two of plan check comments from the city, just to make sure there's nothing that surprises us there. We will be awarding things like all of our exterior wall, which is all the glass and metal and our roofing systems. Those are some of the next major ones that we'll award coming up. Right now, we've been focusing on building structure and all of the MVP systems and elevators and things like that. And it's really driven on what's the lead time, when do we need them, and when's the most opportune time to purchase them. So just to kind of give you an understanding of that strategy and that plan. And so it's how it's laid out in our contract with them, and it's truly one of the benefits of the CMGC process. So that's what we're asking for here. It's just an increase that takes, the total up to a little over 45 million, almost 46 million. Questions? I didn't dive into the specific line items, but gladly we'll go through anything about those.
I recall we had the same discussions before the other project.
Yeah.
It's probably even more critical than every time.
Yeah.
Any questions? Ness, any questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve and Tyler sign up for 45 million?
I move to authorize the library director signing authority up to $45,850,608 for the KNCC Central Library Construction Contract GMP Amendment 2.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
I,
Motion passes.
So the next one is the East Bend Library. And kind of step back, because we haven't talked. As we set up the project, so I'm gonna give you a little history. We broke it into different things, and we said, we want to do the 4 branches in pairs. And so we picked Sisters and Lapine first, because it was just looking at, as we're under construction on those, where could people go get additional services, and didn't want to take down too much. And then we were going to do, after those were done, we would do Sun River and East Bend. As we went through the Central Library site at Strobel, we're marching through, and we had gone through and done some budgets and early designs, and we were talking about, are we doing the right thing at East Bend? And we even said, hey, let's look at a revised scope of work. And this was about a month or two before we went to the city on the Strobel site. And coming out of the Strobel site where the city was not going to give us the entitlements to build on that property that we requested, we made the decision to move off of the Strobel site with Central Library and look at new sites. And that's when we put East Bend on hold to decide, hey, what do we need to figure out where Central is going to be and what we were going to do there. And then reassess what do we do with East Bend. That was discussion we had literally a year and a half or more. And so as we went through that process and really kind of set East Bend back and let the Central Library at Stevens Ranch really take over. And then this past year here, as we really got through, and the Central Library at Stevens Ranch was, hey, everything's moving forward, we're all good, and we were really advancing. That's when we talked about, okay, we really need to relook at East Bend and what we wanted to do. So we met with DPL staff to really talk about All right, what's going on in that facility? It's a leased property, not an owned property. We can touch some elements of building, and then some elements of building, the owner of the building, landlord, are still responsible to maintain it, especially its structure, its skin, its MEP systems, you know. So there's a little bit less we can do to that building as compared to what we could do to all of the owned. I think that there was an evaluation of how it would operate with the central library being located at Stevens Ranch in a very close proximity. So as we evaluated the scope of work that is in my summary, it was like, what needs to be taken care of? What needs to be brought up current? Things like looking at the technology, IT technology that's being used in the systems, is something to make sure that branch continues to function and operate like the other branches are. We wanted to look at signage. So as the collection changes in how it's formatted to the new format, and I always forget its name. Wayfinder. You know, it felt that, hey, that signage needs to be refreshed and updated to really align with that. So somebody walking into East Bend versus Sisters would see the same kind of thing, right? And so that was taken into consideration. We looked at some of the furniture and some of the operational things of like our display units, getting rid of the center counter and going to the mobile unit, because that's how the library's operating now. And so it's changed that operational strategy and utilized those kinds of pieces of equipment. Then we looked at the physical facility. What are the things that need to be upgraded and cleaned up? So one, we wanted to clean up all of the painting and touching up the drywall, anything that's dinged and messed up, give it a real freshening there. There's some doors that need to be worked on, especially in the community room. Those glass doors, they don't function real well. So we're gonna look at them. There's blinds that aren't functioning properly. Signage has some things that are out. So it's really looking at refreshing those kinds of components. And that's what we kind of tried to spell out in here. Lighting was another one, you know, making sure that everything is LED lighting. That's energy efficiency and improvements there and quality of light throughout that. So that was what we were really trying to summarize. So we looked at all of the components that we were doing on all of the projects, whether it's construction or FF&E, and how are we treating this facility? And so this was the scope of work that we determined is what we should go in there and do. This scope of work reduces our cost substantially. I attached a cost summary in there, and I don't know if you got a chance to look at it. We had set up budgets to do basically, let's just go in and fully gut the whole place and rebuild it like we were rebuilding your own projects. And so that's why our budget was much higher for those projects. Not as high as some of them because of the structural issues and the building components that the landlord owns and we can't touch. So, but you can see it's fairly sizable budget. This actually reduces that cost quite substantially. I want to say almost by $2 million. Those costs, we would say, okay, if we're not spending them, they would go back into the general contingency fund for bond funds to be utilized throughout the bond program. However, DPL and the board would choose to do. So that's kind of my summary. Probably questions, or do you have questions on what
I have a question.
Yeah.
It was a good summary here. Over portion to let us know exactly what you've been doing. Is there anything that the landlord is doing? I don't see that participation there, particularly like the one that was the storefront that's leaking.
Yeah.
Things like that from the outside.
It is, you know, we listed that, and that's been an issue. It is a landlord issue. And it's, as we talked about it, we probably won't actually do that repair, but talk to the landlord about, look, this has been a continual problem where this one window leaks. The challenge is they haven't been able to figure out where that leak's coming from. We know where it comes in, but they're not really sure if it's a sheet metal flashing up at the top or the roofing or a leak around the window.
And we've actually had the landlord out several times, and it's one of these problems that is intermittent enough that they make a fix, but then we have to wait until the right set of conditions to see whether that fix was what would address the problem. And so we've done that 2, maybe even 3 times with a couple different ideas to address it. They weren't effective.
And but the landlord is working with us. I mean, we're not trying to tug this landlord along.
With respect to the issues of leaks, the landlord is working with us, but unfortunately, we have yet to really get the problem solved. In terms of the overall remodel within the scope of the bond project, we're pretty much doing that independent of the landlord, but with their knowledge that we're going to be going upgrades, modernization.
And there's not necessarily a list that looks like this that you're going to hand like to say, here it is.
Yep.
Is there a reason for that, or is it just not?
Yeah, I mean, things like requested upgrades to the landlord are kind of out of the scope of our lease. I mean, the lease provides for a certain amount of maintenance and upkeep, and the landlord is responsible for that. But typically with a commercial lease, if you want there to be a tenant improvement, especially one that's structural, you can make that request, but typically the one who's paying for it, responsible for it, and things that would impact structural design of the building itself. Usually a commercial landlord would say, well, thank you very much for your input. Take care of that if we ever decide to make upgrades to this building.
I was wondering about the art, that's the wall art. I was trying to figure out what that was. That's being moved to a pine. What? I've never seen it.
So it's on the walls as you enter into the main. It's actually right in front of you. It's all along the walls there in the children's area.
And we will have pictures of it during Chantal's presentation.
Yeah, it's the glass, flowers and leaves and it.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
It's
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I think,
We talk about the early learning graphics. So that will replace, so we're taking down that art, placing that in line, making repairs to the walls, and then we'll put the graphics that are in all the early learning discovery areas right now, the children's discovery spaces like Behind the Sisters, that really cute graphic. One will be designed for event. That's what we'll go in this place. And we'll get it started.
I'm glad that art is reading this because it is. Can you explain what additional data drops involves, number 18?
So it's just the way so it's part of the IT component.
Uh-huh.
So it's IT data drops, I think it's the general term.
Yes.
But it's really looking at how is the Wi-Fi system working within there? Where do they need data outlets and ports that they may want more of?
Okay,
And so it's really working with Mark Hovey's group to any upgrades that make sense where the users are going to get that value or staff are getting that value. We haven't determined specifically which ones, but we said we want to look at that holistically and say what's working, what's can be upgraded for better performance, easier access for both staff and customers.
Any other questions? And yes.
If we move to the movable service carts, what will happen then to the main like checkout desk there? Will there be any revamping of that?
So the desk itself will come out completely, because we no longer have desks. And we'll infill the flooring and clean that space up, and so one, it adds square footage to be utilized, and one of the things that we're also doing is adding in some additional display units. The mobile service card allows staff to really put that wherever they want it within the building. There's certain limitations, but it may not sit in that exact spot. But that's what it's really doing, is kind of opening up that area, introducing staff to the new system that is being implemented across the board, and using that space for both displays as well as where that is, so.
A good point of comparison, if you're trying to picture what that would look like, it's the customer service model that we've implemented in La Pine and Sisters as part of the renovation.
Yeah.
We have one in downtown that we're using too.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think this is consistent with the language in the bond that talked about bringing this site up to being equivalent with the other branches, and I really like this scope of work, because I think it's appropriate for a leased facility.
Yeah.
Rather than plowing a bunch of money into, you know, something that we don't own. This brings it up equivalent with all the other branches and gives the people access to the same technology and the same services that it makes. So I think this is a really good scope.
All right, anything else? Do I have a motion for the East Bend Library renovation?
Yeah, I move to authorize the library director to direct the project team to proceed with the renovation, scope of work, and budget for the East Bend Library.
Second. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you,
Wow, I'm so used to more.
I know.
Robert.
I think it's Emily, right?
No, you are up, Robert.
Oh, I'm up next, okay. Sorry, I must have been working for
Wait, no, Fuzzy is up. No, Fuzzy, it's about the Josephine library.
That's what I thought.
Sorry, I've got the wrong agenda.
Oh.
You have one?
It's the next.
Sorry, I added it at the last second. So.
It's Josephine Library Decision Impact.
Thank you.
And Sean and Emily. I know,
Do
but
we
not
need-
here.
Sorry. Keep it going.
And I know, but you
I give it to myself, that's right. Yes. And maybe, Robert, if you could start, I've got some people from the county coming at 1 o'clock for that part. So.
For which part, Josephine, joining discussion?
So we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay,
9
Alright.
minutes.
yeah, we can definitely get through my stuff if you want.
Yeah.
Let me set up first screen share.
Unless, I don't understand. Unless Eric Crop is on,
He is not,
oh,
but I will admit that if I'm doing this, I may not see if he joins.
here, I will, oh. Here you want?
Yeah.
Just check that participants.
Yeah.
I think he's coming on.
All right.
And do we have these charts or no? Okay.
We'll get into you after.
All right, so this is part of the overall discussion and presentation on our asset protection policy for the library. And my portion is focused specifically on how we're maintaining our facilities as our, as one of our largest asset classes in the district. So this is taken right from the policy, and just as a reminder, so library director will not allow assets to be unprotected, inadequately maintained, or unnecessarily risked. And then the rest of the presentation will take that policy and apply it to the facilities. How are we protecting, maintaining, and reducing and managing risk in our buildings? The vision from the facilities department is to help create a safe and welcoming set of facilities that are appropriately sized, meeting the needs of our staff and customers. And I always like to throw in some pictures throughout the year, so that first one you can see there is that was, I think, the day that we opened up the Redmond Design Center location to the public for the first time. So it was just great to see that we were able to maintain service and have a space for Redmond throughout the course of construction. And then that second picture is the open house for Sisters. So just a very exciting kind of a chance to open that back up to the public. This is just as a reminder of the kind of strategies that we employ in terms of the maintenance and upkeep of our facilities. It's a combination of responsive and preventative. So staying on top of preventive maintenance actions and keeping things on a regular inspection schedule, seasonal preparation, regular site visits, and then that kind of preventative approach in combination with a highly responsive system where staff at any level can put in an action request to the facilities team, and it goes into our queue, and we're able to prioritize, group them, and manage it with a really small team, given the amount of breadth across the county that we cover. With 2 individuals on our facilities team, we're able to cover all those buildings and be quite responsive in terms of action requests and things that need addressing. For major accomplishments of the year, it's always fun to look back and again, see some of the pictures. So this first pair is a before and after of the front entrance of this building. We had a chance to give the building a fresh coat of paint, refinish the doors, and very close in time to that, we were also able to repair a bunch of weathered concrete to make those stairways and rampways safer for people to access the building. So definitely helps to maintain this historic building and keep it running and at its best performance through our use of it. In addition, this year was also the year that we were able to purchase and provision the library outreach vehicles. And that was, it's part of the library services purview, but facilities was able to assist with the outfitting of those vehicles, getting the interiors kind of set up for library outreach to just make it as flexible as possible and enable our librarians and other staff to make their way out to the various parts of the community. One of the things that if you go out there, I wouldn't recommend doing it today with the snow, but if you go out there in better weather, you'll notice that for our 2 larger outreach vehicles, the orange vehicle and the big green van, we were able to fit it with awnings as well, retractable awnings, so that when they go in the summertime to outdoor events, they're able to set that up and have some shade cover while they're doing events right by the vehicle. Then one of the biggest things that we were able to take part on and assist and support was the transition of 4 different branch locations out of our buildings and into temporary facilities, and then moving 2 of those back in so that we could reopen those buildings to the public. Awful lot of other departments involved with that, and obviously help from our contractors and the entire design team. But we were able to take part in that and help to support all of those events. So what are some challenges going forward that as we look into the new year, this continues to be something of high attention for us, and that is managing those temporary locations during construction renovation, handling the curveballs when they happen, and being able to flexibly manage. Nobody could have anticipated that we would have to close La Pine's temporary location about a month after we had opened it up. But we were able to safely retrieve as much as we could out of that location after the accident. And again, as part of what we do, we also help to support, as the library has, the district has been able to manage other services during a period of downtime for the Pine. We, you know, as we'll talk about in a little bit, also have had to manage some more complications in the Pine. Given the timing and everything, we'll probably cover that topic after we shift over to the county. One of the big challenges moving forward is as we move into these new buildings, we have lots of new equipment, new systems, new controls, new schedules and all of that. So we'll be looking at that in this coming year. What are some of the new things that we'll want to put onto our regular inspection schedule, our regular preventative maintenance schedules, and understanding how do we stay on top of that as we take ownership back of these systems from the contractor as they. And then just a thing to highlight is that in the coming year, I'll probably be coming before the board for at least one major contract, support contract for facilities is coming to an end, and that's our janitorial support contract. So we'll be looking to put that back out for RFP, consider proposals, and the size, the dollar amount would put it at a level where we'd be looking for a decision. That's what I have, other than the specifics about Lapine. Did you have any questions for me?
I have a question about facilities.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me, will East Bend have to have a separate facility while the remodel, or can it stay open?
So one thing that we talked with Sunwest Builders about was as much as we can with the scope that we've identified, developing a schedule that will allow us to have minimal impact to operations. So unlike with Lapine and Sisters and Sun River, where we identified a stretch of time over many months where we would bring the permanent building down and relocate. Our desire with East Bend is, given the limited scope of the work they're doing, that we wouldn't have to close the building for a long stretch. Potentially a few days or a week, where we might need to do something like pull shelves, repaint the walls and put shelves back on. But the rest of the items identified in that memo seem to be of a limited enough scope that we will be able to accomplish that on down days or prior to opening, or kind of cordoning off certain areas. There may be closures of, let's say, the community room may be closed for a period while we do the renovation there, but the rest of the library open. We'll just kind of manage that operation.
Other thing, you talked about, there's a lot of new systems and your team or the library team. Do you have training for all these new systems?
Yeah, so one of the most recent ones was a training on the new AV systems that are going into the community. How do they work and how do you hook things up? So as each of these new systems are being commissioned and being brought online, we're scheduling training sessions with the contractor and making sure that we have all of the operations and maintenance manuals, and eventually we'll get a set of drawings that constitute what's called the as-built drawing. So like any deviations from what was planned to what it actually was built as would be documented there too. We'll be able to refer to that as well.
What's the time scheduling for the renovation at the East Bend Library?
I think that's yet to be determined when we have like a rough schedule outlined in that.
Yeah.
Right?
Roughly, it would happen in this calendar year of 2024. The amount of work isn't extensive, from a time. I think we want to look at when is the opportune time, because we have Sun River opening and Redmond opening this year. And so those are going to be big. They put a lot of burden on operations. So we're going to sequence, trying to look at when's the best time to do this, so it's not overtaxing. But the goal is to have it done by the end of the
Okay.
It's our initial. I'm going to work up a more detailed schedule now we know that we can move forward with this.
Robert, I noticed on your list of rotating inspections that exterior inspections are conducted quarterly, but how about interior inspections? Do you do those on a work order type of system, or do you
Yeah,
set aside time to really do a building walkthrough?
good question. The answer for interior is it honestly depends. So for exterior, you really are looking at the envelope of the building, condition of paint, things like that.
Right.
But interior, you have so many different systems and each of them is on their own schedule. So rather than just having that listed on that slide as interior investigations and inspections happening on this basis, it really is broken down there where it says, okay, mechanical systems, we're inspecting that on this level of frequency. Condition of carpets and walls and,
Right.
you know, and anything needing patching is. So some things we're inspecting quarterly, in the mechanical systems. Some things we're inspecting semi-annually, like walkthroughs and looking at conditions of walls, conditions of carpets, finishes, things like that, things that might need touch-ups. Some things are on a monthly schedule, such as safety items. And sometimes it's not even our team that's doing the inspection, sometimes it's our broader safety committee members who are representing their buildings and then reporting back to us.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Robert?
No, thanks.
We'll have a part 2 for Robert. So kind of a related difference on our agenda was the Josephine County decision where a resident asked to withdraw from the library district. And that is one, and it was accepted by the county there. And I'm gonna kind of stop at that summary because we have a lot of experts here, much more than I, including Emily O'Neill, who's on the Intellectual Freedom Committee for the Oregon State Library, and this is very closely related to intellectual freedom. Because the person who withdrew was withdrawing because they objected to types of materials that the library. Second, we also have Buzzy Nielsen with us from the State Library, who has been closely involved with this. And then we have Eric Kropp from the county, Deschutes County, the Deputy County Administrator, one of two, there's another one, Ian, I don't know if you know. And kind of from that perspective of how would the county handle this if they have one? As far as I know, to the state, we don't have an official one. Right. Yes. So I kind of let Emily, why don't you start us off, give us a little history of what this.
Sure, yeah, and actually, maybe I'll just stand just so I can see you all, and I don't mean for it to be that formal, but kind of tucked behind you. Okay, taking my tech services manager hat off, putting my IFC chair hat on. So as Todd mentioned, this came to my attention under the Intellectual Freedom Committee through the Oregon Library Association. Sorry, put the hair in my mouth. Because Josephine started this journey with this individual with concerns over materials in the library collection. And we kind of supported them through that process. They retained the materials, and the individual was so upset with the library functionings and those decisions that they actually ran for the library board for the intention of maybe making those changes internally. They did not win that election. And so then they have decided that they don't want to be a part of the library at all. And so therefore I shouldn't have to pay taxes because this is not a service that I am going to use. So they looked into the current Oregon statutes to see what an opt-out vote is, and the Oregon statutes do have an opt-out option. So it's the ORS 198.870, specifically looking at section 4. So this individual put forward a petition to the library board to opt out of library services, and what that means is that not only would they not have to pay the property taxes that are automatically pulled because they are a special district like our own, but then they would also not be able to receive any of the services that you would get if you had paid for those items. And that exchange can exist if they can prove that they couldn't possibly have gotten those services anyway. So the way that it's actually written, I'm just going to read the ORS, is the county board may approve the petition as presented, or it may adjust the boundaries and approve the petition. The petition shall be approved if it has not or is not or would not be feasible for the territory described in the petition to receive service from the district. The petition shall be denied if it appears to be or would be feasible for the territory described in the petition to receive service to the district. So feasibility is the question on the table, and the definition, the legal ORS definition of feasibility has not had to go through the courts. And so it is left vague at this exact juncture. So the petitioners put forward to opt out of library services and went in front of the county commission in Josephine, and they talked about feasibility. And they also talked about what the definition of a territory was, and they seemed much more concerned on whether or not the service was tied directly to the territory, the actual property that was being taxed. And that's where things get really vague legally, is what is exactly being taxed? What is feasibility? Is it tied to the taxpayer? Is it tied to the property itself? And through that discussion, the Josephine County Commissioners voted 2-1 to allow this individual to opt out of library services. So what that means for special districts, and probably where I should have started, is that though this is a library special district, this opt-out clause applies to all special districts across the state of Oregon. So somebody could feasibly opt out of Parks and Rec, or fire, or emergency, or water, based off of this feasibility clause. And so Josephine, having allowed this opt-out clause, is creating some concern at special districts across the state. Of course, libraries, because it happened at libraries, but I think any special district should be somewhat concerned. And where we are now is that Josephine County, the library, Josephine Community Library, immediately sought legal support, both through SDAO, but also the circuit court. And they received a circuit court judge just on January 3rd, put in allowed a cease and desist order. So that cease and desist order tells the library board, or the county commissioners, that they're not allowed to move forward with any additional opt-out votes. Additional petitions have been submitted to the county commissioners for additional review. And so that cease and desist order essentially stops the review of those petitions and also stops the actual process of removing the property tax from the one opt-out that has already been approved. So the judge is really at the point now, it's just what is a legal review. So deciding, looking back through court case law and coming up with an opinion of what feasibility is, and that would be really the next really big step in this process. We believe a decision will come sometime in the next month or so, but we don't know. The law takes a long time. And so what that means for us, taking my IFC hat on and putting my tech services hat on, we, of course, are a library district, so our funding matches identically to Josephine's. We also could feasibly receive opt-out votes because we follow the same ORS. And we live in a world where people have concerns about library materials, library services, library anythings. Also, we're Oregon, and people don't like to pay taxes if they don't have to. So if they see an opportunity to opt out, they might choose to do that. So I think my feeling at this moment is that we should be prepared as a district to understand that an opt-out vote could come to us. I think it would behoove us to decide what feasibility means to us. Typically, the law states that it is the petitioner that has to define to prove that they cannot feasibly receive library services on their property, so that the onus is not on us. But it might be helpful, just considering that is so vague currently in the current legal system. So that's what's happening at Josephine. The people that know more about what could happen with an opt-out vote are here. So I'm gonna pause and say those are the specifics that I know of, just specific to Josephine, but we have somebody here that could talk about what could happen here in Deschutes. And Buzzy's here from the state. Buzzy, do you have anything you want to add from Josephine?
No, you did a great summary of Josephine. I can add some more kind of background information if people are interested, but I also think hearing from Eric from the county would be good too. I'm happy to talk whenever you guys would like me to, or if you would like me to.
Where do you want me to go? Wherever you're comfortable, and I did just share with them the petition that legal form that the county came up with, and yes, I'm gonna email that to you right now.
Great, thank you for having me. I'm Eric Kropp. I work as Deputy County Administrator for Deschutes County. I was before this board several years ago as we had transitioned law library services from Deschutes County to Deschutes Public Library. And we're very pleased with that process. And as suspected, Deschutes Public Library has more knowledge and expertise of library services than Deschutes County. So we're very happy with the transition and continue to work with Lynn and Todd and the law librarian. First, I want to start with acknowledging that staff recognizes the magnitude of this policy discussion and decision. I'm a 30-year city-county employee, and we recognize the magnitude of this type of decision on local governments, special districts, and the revenue to provide these services. What I'd like to do this afternoon is talk about more about process, and specifically Deschutes County. I was planning on talking about Josephine County, but your staff did a great job of summarizing that. As was mentioned, the key is ORS 198.870, section or subsection 4, where the district has not or cannot feasibly serve the property. That's the key part of it. At Deschutes County on December 14th, just last month, we received an email from a local resident asking to be withdrawn from the district. Most likely they saw the information about Josephine County and that gave them the idea. That's not confirmed, but most likely. The inquiry came from a City of Bend resident. The property is near Elk Meadows Elementary School, just so you have a geographic area. County Council put together kind of the official withdrawal petition or application, and that was sent to the person who inquired about 10 to 14 days ago. We have not heard back from that person since that last communication where we said, here's the formal process. What we received was an email saying they wanted to pursue an opt-out and inquired about the process. So what our legal counsel did is put together that process and sent. That's what Todd just passed out. We will let Todd know as soon as we receive the formal petition, so that he's informed, and obviously he could forward that on to the library board and staff. Let me walk through the process, and this is part of the handout that Todd did, and this was put together by our legal counsel. So if the petition is submitted to the county, based on the ORS, we have to schedule a hearing before our board, and there's some timelines.
Just because it's not for,
Okay,
if you're looking for it, it's not.
actually, I think probably great. So I'm starting with,
And that's, we'll forward this to you after the meeting.
And so I understand, this is what has to be done for each application, it's not.
correct. So number one, petition is filed with admin or the Board of County Commissioners. If that occurs, then we have to schedule a hearing for the board, not less than 30 days, nor more than 50 days after the petition is received by the county. Then the board conducts a hearing. If the board makes a finding that it would be feasible to serve the property, which is A, then the petition is denied and it ends there. There's a footnote there that the board decision can be challenged in circuit court by writ of review. So if the board says, yes, the property can be served or agrees, then it is denied and then it ends there. And at the hearing, there's an opportunity for public input, for library board input, really input from anybody. So the other option for the board is under 3B. If the board makes a finding that the property has not, is not, or would not be feasible to be served, then the petition is approved pending a final hearing on the petition. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Again, on that final hearing, we have a time limit. We can't, there's just a window. We have to schedule it not less than 20 days, or not less than 20, nor more than 50 days of that hearing or that order. And in that time, if less than 100 of the electors who are registered in the library district submit a request basically to withdraw the petition. So if less than 100 people sign a petition saying, to withdraw it, then that property is withdrawn from the district. If more than 100 people sign the petition saying, we don't really agree with this, then it goes to a vote of the whole district. So think of it as a signature, a petition. When you go around, when you're in front of the library and somebody's saying, here, sign this petition to put something on the ballot, it's a similar process. So if you get 100 people or more that sign the petition saying, hey, we don't think this property should be withdrawn, then it goes to a vote of the whole district, everybody, all the voting members of the library district. And that occurs at the next available county election. If less than 100 people sign that petition, then the person is opted out. One key is, I talked to our legal counsel and said, if the library board wanted to engage in this process, what's the proper method? And our legal counsel said, and obviously they're not legal counsel to the library district, but our legal counsel's recommendation is to go through the formal process and do it at that scheduled hearing, not to contact commissioners individually, because if that occurs, then at that hearing, commissioners would have to disclose that communication, and it opens it up for a challenge, saying that maybe the commissioner can't rule on it because of this other. So our advice, the county's advice is, if the library district wants to engage, to do it through that public process. And that public process would be a public hearing where people can testify before the board and enter written communication into the record. So again, we have not received the formal petition. We received an email inquiry. The person who sent the inquiry and received the formal petition to withdraw, I think is what was passed out. When you read through that formal petition, probably the most important piece of it is there's a question about number 6. The above listed district has not or cannot feasibly service the territory or property proposed to be withdrawn because, and then we ask for a description of why. And to me, that's the crux of the decision and the analysis for the board. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Eric, thank you for explaining this. So the way that I'm understanding this is, so citizen A, the person who's petitioning, gets, if they were successful in their application, it would essentially redraw the district boundaries to exclude their property.
Yes.
So there's a little island in the middle of Deschutes County that is outside of the district.
Yes.
And then is there, so say they sell the property, they decide to move away, and this little island is left, and the people decide that they want library services, is there another procedure that they can do to add into the district?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the same or ORSs, but At the county, we frequently get that where it's typically the Parks District.
Right.
And oftentimes a new development will petition to be part of the Parks District.
Okay.
Process.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
In Josephine County, they did not go before the library. They just went to the county commissioners, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Based on the ORS, it goes to the Board of County Commissioners. Most likely because the county is that collects the taxes and does the assessments.
How would that individual who buys the house that's now the island, how would they know that they're not part of the library district? Aside from looking at their tax record, like what would alert them?
It would be the tax records.
Yeah.
We would also need to put a process in place, and this is something I would probably have to support, Myra and the rest of the management team on. How to, successfully opt them out, so to like have it in their current, record that says they're not there, so that individual that bought the house would come to the library and they, hopefully we would have some sort of process in place where we would say this property is opted out, you're gonna have to go to the county, but obviously we don't have a process like that.
Because it
Hasn't been necessary, yeah.
So it wouldn't be like a lien, they have to disclose that.
So-
But this would be disclosed in your property, in your.
I'm not aware of any requirement. I think it would be a good practice if it occurs for the library to reach out and say, oh, by the way, you're not part of our district, so if you come in to get a library card, and here's how to.
And I guess my biggest question in all of this is I know that there's really good staff awareness of this issue as it pertains to the larger scope of special districts as far as road districts, water districts, 911, all the special, I think there's 25 or 27 different kinds of special districts in the state. So what is the is the board up on this issue, or have you been talking?
We have been briefing the board and we'll continue.
Okay, so they understand the scope
Yes.
of it's not just libraries. I mean, it's obviously that's what's most important to us,
Yes.
but
At the county,
really it's the larger
We have a
issue.
911 district and somebody could say, I never called 911.
Right, I'll just take a pass on 911.
Or people's, local government for 30 years, I had people say, I don't want to pay school taxes because I don't have children. My children have graduated from elementary school.
Right, I mean, this could completely change the nature of service delivery for government agencies in the state.
Yes.
As well as really complicating, like how do the agencies themselves know how to budget for the coming year if they don't know who's gonna be a part of their service district or not?
Yeah. And also on the county side, we have the clerk's office that runs elections, and so all of a sudden you're pulling people out of districts and elections.
Right, yeah, like how do they accommodate that?
You understand the thing?
Well, so you know you do. Yeah.
Yeah, we have and will continue to communicate that.
I suspect that this, ORS was written more for people who have a piece of property that fire department would say cannot get to. So that's the feasibility part. I don't understand feasibility for, say, a library district. You can always drive to, so I don't understand what could they use.
Yeah, I don't know the legislative history of the ORS, but just as a local government person, I would agree that it seems to make more sense when the physical service cannot be. I mean, I was talking to somebody I work with, and I said, well, you live on an island and the bridge goes down and then you can't provide fire services, that seems to make sense.
Right, or a water delivery.
Yeah.
Problem.
But what was the feasibility?
Right.
It's just.
And that's exactly what is in front of the circuit court judge and Josephine, is to try and define that feasibility because it has not been legally defined. So that's the exact question that was on the table with their Board of Commissioners and would be on the table with ours is to, until there is a legal judgment on that. Yeah,
But what did they use?
they,
as-
yeah, they,
Buzzing's chat. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
they said, the way that it is written, and I just wanna pull it up again, it says feasibility for the territory described. And so they were taking that phrase very literal in that there isn't a physical library on that property. And so it's not feasible for that property to have library services, because how can you serve a property physically? And so it is very convoluted in some ways, but it ultimately was tied to how do you give library services to a property? And so the library tried to advocate for, digital resources, or, the fact that we have all sorts of online resources. The fact that we can deliver materials to your site, and they said that doesn't benefit the property. So then arguments were shared that are true. This is, you can look this up, that being close to a school or a library increases your property's value. And so being able to say that would absolutely serve the property. The property value has now gone up because of the proximity to a library. And the Board of Commissioners and Josephine didn't feel like that was service to the property. So that ultimately is what it's coming down to, is what is the definition of feasibility? And is that feasibility tied to the property itself, or is that feasibility tied to the taxpayer that lives at that property?
And just a additional background from Buzzy in the chat. He says, DPL is somewhat unusual among special district libraries in that your borders include the entire county. So there are processes, like Emily mentioned, in other special district libraries. We looked into the legislative history, to your point, Bunny. There's not much specific to this provision, as it was passed in the 70s, along with a number of other changes to special district law.
Is there any possibility this may go back to the state to say?
Yeah, possibly. So the hope is that it will get resolved in a circuit court and be able to get legal precedent defining the vague terms in the ORS. I don't fully understand the other option, but there would be an option that this ORS would go in front of our state legislators and be part of an overall election to better define it, but I don't totally understand that process, but yeah, that would be the other alternative.
And do we believe that in this process, you already have an opt-out request? I'm sure there'll be more, and I'm sure they'll push it go to the Supreme Court if necessary, but do we have a process or that if it's denied and to put everything on hold, how to handle that? From you, I guess.
If it's denied,
If it's denied and you have 50 requests, you have a process of
You do it every same way every time.
we're required based on ORS to if somebody fills out this petition and hands it to us, we have whatever it is, like 20 days to schedule, but not more than.
Yeah.
That's our process and from state law.
And I think Buzzy has his hand up.
Yeah, Lizzie.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm Buzzy Nielsen. I'm program manager for library support at the State Library of Oregon. I also happen to be a resident of Deschutes County. So this provision has been used before. I'm sure Eric can probably talk more about that, but it does get used by districts that I have been referring to as districts that provide property-based services, like fire districts, water districts, irrigation districts. I'm not going to say it's common, but it definitely gets used. So what's not clear is what it means for districts like libraries and Parks and Rec and EMS that provide what I'm referring to as person-based services. It's just kind of a different equation, different thought process. So that's why we were trying to look into the legislative history. So the problem, kind of to Emily's point when she's talking about it going before the legislature, it's not clear that the problem is the way the law is written. It's more the problem is that there's not a lot of legislative history that explains the intent, and there's not really much case law about it either. If there were case law about it, it would probably be fine. But that's partly why this case that the Josephine Community Library District has is so important, is because it potentially is setting case law for interpretation of this statute. And I will also say SDAO is also they're writing a general legal opinion looking into this as well.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question, is what's SDAO's involvement and.
Yeah, so they're seeking a general legal opinion. We are also, they don't give us legal opinions, but we're talking to the Department of Justice, as the agency that helps advise library districts.
I will add that I alerted our attorneys, and they have one attorney on staff who has been working closely with SGAO to help them with their interpretation, so that's good news for us. Sorry.
One other thing I will add is actually a couple things. So one is, in addition to having the injunction, the Josephine petition was rejected by the Department of Revenue for not meeting the technical provisions of ORS 308, which Eric can probably talk far more about than I can. So it's kind of been stopped on kind of a couple of different levels. But we also, so in addition to having to send these petitions and annexation petitions to Department of Revenue, they also have to be sent to the Secretary of State Archives Division. We have been talking to them, and we asked them to look into examples of withdrawals from library districts. And they found a few, but their circumstances were quite different than Josephine. So in a few cases, it was mainly in Umatilla County. So Umatilla County has an island within it, which is the city of Hermiston. So it had to do with properties being annexed into the city of Hermiston, which is not a part of that library district. And that was basically an automated process. Once the property gets annexed, then it gets removed from that district. It also got removed from the county law enforcement district as well. The only instance of an actual property owner petitioned removal was in Lane Library District, which is Cresswell in Lane County. And it was property that was zoned as uninhabitable forest land. And the petition happened shortly after the district was created. So it was literally given that nobody can live on the property, there really kind of wasn't a way for the library district to serve the property. And the library district did not oppose that withdrawal petition either. So those are the only instances that we have seen of this ever happening.
Big impact. Any other questions or comments about this AMS?
I guess the biggest question or concern I have is, what is the definition of feasibility? And, and again, they're looking at, is it the territory versus the landowner? So I think we just need to get some clarification, on that part.
Yes, thank you. That is the big question. So really, I just wanted to make sure, I think you all get it, that this is could be incredibly impactful for us. One thing that we did hear from the county was because we owe a lot of money and we're paying it back through bonds, and that they would not be able to opt out of paying for the bonds. It's basically, which is good news on that part. This would not impact our ability to pay back bonds.
I have a question, if I may. The process that you outlined, just for clarification, the 100 electors registered to request for an election would be 100 electors who are essentially challenging the petition to withdraw, correct?
Yes. So as long as more than 100 people sign a petition saying we don't agree with this.
If we have 20 people who submit to be withdrawn, then we have to get, or the process has to have 100 people.
I think it's probably,
Every
I think it's probably
time
specific.
For each.
Yeah, for each one.
Yeah.
So that's 20 times 100 people.
It can be the same person
Right.
over and over again.
But
yeah.
still, it's just that and then possible elections.
Right.
20 individual elections.
Well, they would go to the next,
There.
yeah. the next
Right,
election, so-
right, but would you, so you'd have 100 ballot issues.
Yeah, I don't know, I have to check with our
Yeah.
county clerk.
Yeah,
The
wow, this.
property A, B, C.
Right.
So related to this question, Buzzy has a question. If the 100 elector process happens and it goes to a vote, who pays for it? Is that paid for out of the affected special district?
The district does, and there's an email from Nick, I think it's like $150.
It's $100, or it could be $150. Which is good, because our board elections cost.
Yeah.
Thousands, tens of them.
So this person who filled out paperwork,
If they fill out.
if they fill it out, would have to pay something to have this.
No, we do, the library.
The library
pays.
district.
Library pays for every.
If
If it goes.
there's an
Yeah.
election to overturn county commissioner decision.
But that's way, well, as you say, that's way less than the board.
Yes.
Is there a filing fee with the petition?
No.
That should be.
Yeah.
More. They could-
And then I will point out, I did, send to Nick that with a petition like this, since there are multiple special districts, that our preference is that there's a petition form that fits all of them, not targets the library. But that's something for the county to work out.
Yes, they have
Right.
like a checkbox of fire district.
Yeah.
Person. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think.
Was it Josephine that voted to,
Yes. They just got their library district in 2017.
they
Yeah.
voted to?
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Very helpful. And like I said, we'll keep in close contact with Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Doing the law library. That way you have to get that.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric.
You're not even the law library.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Leslie, also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Buzzy.
So, and thank you, Robert, for, thank you, Buzzy. Thank you, Emily.
Yes.
That was so good, we're gonna be back.
Yeah.
But I do want to let Robert kind of finish up where he was going through the facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little palate cleanser. I'll actually just recalibrate your brains to Lapine Library. And I'll start off by saying that as part of the overall renovation, we took a look at several of the existing systems in the building. One of which being the way we heat the building. For Lapine Library, the existing system in that building was a series of gas furnaces that are zoned to different parts of the building. And it runs off of utility gas line coming in from Cascade Electrics. So as part of the analysis for the renovation, we considered and approved a plan to develop a more efficient system that utilizes electric heat pumps in warmer temperatures and then switches over to gas furnaces as the temperatures outside get colder. In addition, we actually replaced the existing furnaces, which were 20 years old, with new gas furnaces, new heat exchangers, and these new electric gas pump or heat pumps, the electric heat pumps. So that's the system that we have in place in Lapine since we reopened. Now, with the renovation, there's and one of the things the board approved was for us to bring in a commissioning agent to take a look at that system and the rest of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and make sure that we have a clear understanding of what was specified in the design, compare it to what was installed, and then develop findings to either say, yep, this has matched specification, it's going to perform as specified, as designed. The materials for the district to be able to maintain and operate that, and be able to continue to use it are all in place. Commission, you're good to go. Or here are our findings, address these findings. So that's all background for what we've been going through in the last month or two in Pine. But I wanted you to kind of understand the overall system and what's in play. And then now we'll look at the specifics, which is to say that in Lapine, we had 3 different closures, and I'll talk about each of those. And we're running at modified hours right now. I'll talk about that as well and the reasons behind each of those. So first closure was related to a gas leak that was detected. It was noted by staff and customers. And we called out the fire department and the gas company to come and check. They validated, yes, indeed, you have a gas leak. We're going to need to shut you off until you've addressed that. So they turned off the gas line into the building for safety. We evacuated the building, obviously, and then we closed the building until we could get back in there to have the contractor come and repair the leaks. They found 2 different areas where the leaks were discovered. One was on an existing portion of the line that comes into the building, just where that matches up to the new line. So it's difficult to say, was there an existing leak that was in play long before, or was it something that they had gotten loosened or jostled when the work was done to bring in the new system? The second leak was absolutely part of the new installation, and so that one was one that was addressed. Both of them were addressed by the contractor with these leaks. So that closure happened on a Saturday afternoon. Typical hours for Lapine, or we're closed on Sundays and Mondays anyway. So we were able to get the subcontractor in to do the repair and address the leak and get Cascade Natural Gas back in there to turn the line back on and get us going in time to reopen on the following Tuesday. So in terms of impact to services, it was fairly limited. Having said that, it did raise several questions that we're still in the process of troubleshooting with SunWest Builders and with their subcontractor Cascade Heating about how long had the leak been in play, how did it not get caught during installation, or a series of other safeguards and checks that should have addressed it before it was smelled as a gas leak. As I say, we're still trying to figure out how exactly we got to that point without having been caught earlier. And I'll come back to the board once we know more, or Greg will, when be part of his overall report to the board once we know more information. So that's the gas leak related closure. In addition to that, as part of bringing this new system up and online, we had noted that the building was running colder than we expected it to with a new system. Now, at first, that was because there were some delays in some of the parts that were getting installed. Some of those heat exchangers were late from the supplier. So we were waiting for that to get all put in place. That all finally got put in place. The system was up and running as advertised. Building was still cold. So shortly after we reopened from the gas leak, we were able to get the heating subcontractor back in to figure out what's going on with the cold building. In the course of their troubleshoot of the cold temperatures, they disconnected a gas line into one of the furnaces, which, while did not create a new leak, did release some gas in the building from the residual in the line. So people were able to smell natural gas less than a week after we had closed for a natural gas leak. Out of an abundance of caution, we thought we knew what was the issue, but we closed the building again so that we could, again, bring in the right folks to take measurements, determine there was not a leak. And so we closed that second time on just the abundance of caution, because we smelled gas and determined it wasn't a leak. Got the building back open, but the underlying issue of the heating of the building was still there. And now we're talking mid-December, so temperatures, thankfully, we had a fairly mild December, but even so, down in La Pine, the overnight temperatures were starting to get down into the teens. And the system was not adequately heating the building. So we had reached a point where the temperatures got to a level where we did not feel comfortable maintaining operations. So we closed the building again based on the fact that it wasn't warm enough for our staff or our customers to really be able to work and do what they needed to do. We closed that third time, again brought out Sunwest Builders, again brought out Cascade Heating to investigate what's going on. And what they determined was the immediate issue, and I'm using that word carefully because they're still working on a root cause, but the immediate issue was that dual system kind of failed in the way that it operates. What do I mean by that? There was a fault on all of the gas furnaces that basically detected that the temperatures in the furnaces were getting too hot. And so they hit this over temperature fault all at the same time, and they all shut off. But the temperatures outside were cold enough that the electrical system was already off, right? Because the electrical system is really designed to work in the warmer temperatures, like in the 40-degree range. And the reason why that shuts off at the lower range is because that system it's designed to work really efficiently in cool temperatures, but not well in cold temperatures, and so it's supplemented by the gas. So the electric system was never going to come on because it was too cold. The gas system that was supposed to be running to heat the building shut off because of this mysterious fault. And therefore we had nothing heating the building for a stretch of time. They reset the furnaces, they made a few other adjustments based on what they thought might be the cause. The biggest adjustment that they made to the system was that they started running the fans at a higher rate of speed. And so the initial thinking was, let's get the fans running so that when the gas furnaces are running, they're blowing more warm air in the building, and it'll help the system just kind of keep up with it when temperatures are really cold outside. The nearest that they can guess right now is that by also running the air across the system at a higher rate, they're air cooling whatever it was that might have triggered all of those furnaces to detect that things were running too hot. All of that is to say that they still don't know why the system thought that it was too hot and shut all of them off at the same time, because the system, A, it's new furnaces, and B, was performing as specified. And so they still have quite a bit of work to do to figure out what exactly caused the faults to happen. Which brings me to the late opening and modified schedule right now. In the last 2 weeks, we've been able to run the system without it repeating this particular problem. So that the building's been a very consistent temperature, comfortable. We haven't had the fault occur in the furnaces. And so we're gaining a little bit of confidence back that that the system is going to be able to keep up through these cold temperatures. But until the contractor has identified the root cause of what triggered the issue in the first place, we're still guardedly optimistic, and they're still doing more work in the building. And so we made a decision to modify the open time to noon for several reasons. First, it gives the contractor time each morning to come on in with their sub and do some more investigation and troubleshooting. Two, it gives our staff the opportunity and the time to come in, assess the building and see if the temperatures are an issue, so that we can take remedial steps and get things addressed before we open the doors to the public. And three, it also gives us a little bit of more of a cushion for just addressing these unknowns. It allows us to gain a little bit more time, a little bit more confidence as we head into the heart of the winter, that we're going to have a system that's going to stay up and running. So that's kind of where we stand right now. I think I've hit all the major questions.
A very interesting thing for us is we put the exact same system in Sister.
That's what I was gonna ask about.
That's a great point.
And it has been working well. And so it's actually been helpful for us to kind of take some theories and say, well, that's not happening in
Yeah.
Sisters, so try something else.
Yeah, the biggest distinction between Lapine and Sisters in terms of the heating system is that Lapine is on natural gas from Cascade, and Sisters is on propane from a tank that is right there on the property. The regulators and the gas flow are slightly different with a propane system, but you're still running an explosive gas through the line to ignite in a furnace and heat the air. So in principle, they should be behaving in entirely identical ways, and that's part of the mystery, but also does give us a nice point of comparison for them in terms of that.
I also will add, because I sent it out emails to the board, but we had about 4 different checks and balances coming through just to make sure the building is safe. The staff, and in addition to that, OSHA came out and did an inspection. We did just hear, at least verbally from them, that they see no faults. Which is good for us, just to have some confidence for our staff and the public.
Oh, and also to close the thread that I opened up at the beginning, that commissioning agent that we have as a third party independent eye on the work also came in and provided a very extensive report of other items for the contractor to work through. So part of the work that they're doing in the mornings before we open is addressing each of those issues. And, it may just be a preponderance of things, right? So as they're addressing these issues, that at least gives me a little bit more confidence that we have a better system that's going to be more resilient and less likely to have one of these cascading faults. Because they're addressing all of these other findings that were also very important in order to bring that system into specification.
And who is paying for this? The contractor that put the system in? Are they a bit at fault? Are they picking up this cost?
Well, I'll say this, that all of these systems and pretty much everything that's going into the renovation projects is under warranty. Each of those warranties has different periods of time, but the mechanical systems are still under warranty. So the work that's being done is being addressed as a warranty issue from the contractor to address in order to be able to say, yep, you guys are still covered under the work that we did.
And this sort of raises the larger issue of, and I guess Greg would be the person to address this, if we build a building and something is not working, it's supposed to be working, what is our recourse? I mean, like, is that where insurance comes into play, or, I mean, is it a lawsuit, or what?
So there's a number of steps through that. So the first is to go back to the general contractor. So in this case, on the branches, that's Sunwest. And so there's the contractual. So we still actually hold their retention funds, because we said this needs to get resolved before we release the balance of your payment. Because if we felt that we incurred costs that we shouldn't, that we would then say, we intend to back charge or deduct this from what we owe. So that's our first recourse, is to go back to them and say, this is your problem, you need to fix it.
Okay.
In this case, they have stepped up, both the general and their subs.
Right, and I'm
Yeah.
not implying
No.
anything different.
Sure. But the next protection is that we also bonded the general contractor. So those are labor and material performance bonds. And if we got into a situation where they weren't performing, we could go against the bonds and basically call in the bonding company, and they either take it over to fix, or they put the pressure on the contractor to fix it. General contractors never want their bonds called because it impacts them for a very long time. option we have within the contract, it does lay out dispute mitigation. So if we had to dispute something, it is spelled out in there between arbitration and litigation of each step that we go through. I think one thing I would add to what Robert had said is, our engineer of record who designed the system, they're coming down next week. That's correct. And going through, they were down in October and did a review of the system at that time. But because the heating units were late in arriving, they saw the system before it was 100% complete. So they're reviewing all of the information that's happening and being communicated out of what's not working, how it's being addressed. They helped answer an RFI on some of the adjustments, and they're also reviewing the commissioning. What the commissioning agent is finding. So they'll be on site at both Sisters and LaPine next week to do their inspections as our design. And you know, from that, we would expect that they would give any punch list, any corrective action they think contractors should take, or any questions they may have on the contract.
So they're kind of looking at what they designed versus how it was installed,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. And the commissioning agent does that very much. That's what commissioning is to test it and verify. This lets our designer, because if there was a design fault, we would be going back to North Hall and their sub-consultant, in this case, Interface, designed our mechanical system, to say, hey, you designed it incorrectly. I don't think that's the issue based on everything we've determined to date.
But if it was a design problem, then their sisters be having the same problem.
It potentially, you would think that would be the case. So I think one of the things, I don't think it's directly related, but you know, we've tried to reutilize the control system. And that's why we last month presented and approved changing it. Is these new controls will help us to manage the system better. It would not necessarily prevent this. But I think as we go forward, and then all of our projects going forward have commissioning on them. You know, all of the bigger projects are already planned and all have new controls planned instead of trying to reuse those old ones.
Yeah, we're certainly putting it through its paces.
yeah, no, that's what you want after you build a building, is you want all the extreme weather events to happen
Yes, right.
right away.
Put a new roof on.
Yeah, I can tell you
Yeah.
that the Strobel system works great.
That's-
Other, you specifically had those questions.
No, I just, really good that we're able to have the building open at least part of the day. At the same time, we're working at resolving this. So I think that's a real plus to the district.
Any other questions for Robert? Robert, is that all your presentation? Do you have more?
I don't know, maybe we'll take a break and.
Thank you, Robert. That kind of leads into our asset protection monitoring. Which to save you some pain, I'm not going to go through word by word, but just check to see if you have any questions based on my interpretation of this executive limitation. Awesome.
Any questions? MS? Then do we have a motion to approve?
I moved, the library is in compliance with the asset protection executive limitations policy.
Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor? Motion passes. Okay, we can please recall this. Are we up to Emily in collection?
Yes, may I suggest maybe we take a 5-minute break?
It's gonna take me
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause recording.
Are we ready to start? I'll call this meeting back to order.
right, well, thank you for having me. This is my annual collection development presentation and just sharing with you all what's been happening across the district over the last year as it relates to collection development. Hold on.
You can touch the board too.
I'm gonna just move this over here and then I'll see it. All right, great. National trends. So the first place I want to start is really just to look at what's happening nationally. This helps us just kind of frame our conversation and say like, where are we comparing, both nationally, but then of course we like to look at our state peers. So we'll look at that second. The first thing that I just want to cover is looking at trends by format. I know that's been an ongoing question that just we're constantly curious about. We hear often, you know, the world's going digital, and so what is the status of a print book in our world today? And do we have a crystal ball of what is it going to look like with the years to come? And overall, research is showing that yes, people love digital, but they still really, really love books. So even though digital has been on the rise since it, you know, came to fruition about 20 years ago now, 25 years ago, still the print book has long surpassed the interest of our communities and our readers. And there seems to be little reality that digital will ever surpass that. So even though digital continues to rise, it is our print readers that kind of take over the readership interests in our nation. So from the Pew Research Center, this is from 2021, print books continue to be more popular than ebooks, and that's just orienting ourselves a little bit here. Reading any format, about 75% of people will say, I'll read anything. So that's both print, digital, whatever. But 65% say, I will only read a print book. I do not want an ebook. Give me a print book.
It's me.
Yeah. There are 30% that say they want to read only an ebook, and we want to support them too. We want to support all readers. But just looking at that gap alone, over 2 times as many readers choose a print book than they do an ebook. And this is again back in 2021. And then the last is the listen to an audiobook. And I think that one's really special because we know that e-audio in particular is rising. And physical audio in particular is decreasing. We've heard that trend over and over again from me. And you'll see, you know, this is a massive upward trajectory as this interest in our audio reading across our communities.
I know
Yeah.
I'm supposed to put questions, but.
I love it
But I
already.
can't tell.
Yeah.
Is this that they are willing to, or is this that they have read?
This is that they are willing to.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Also within that same research, the question of, you know, who are our readers? What is our demographic? So college graduates, especially like to read a book in any format. I'll move that so you can see that. But that's not for everyone. So again, willingness to read. Men are more willing to read any format, or women are more willing to read any format. Men are a little bit more picky. Only a teeny tiny bit though. Overall, it is, you know, our Caucasian populations that are choosing to read a print book. You know, you can take a lot of deductions from this. I would say the best takeaway is to go look at that as it relates to Deschutes County and say, what does this compare to our demographics in this county? Like, who are our demographics? And are we in alignment with our services based off of the national trends? So rather than going one by one, this just might be a help guide for us as we look at the services that we provide. This is going to be the death of me. Oh, yes, you'll get it. Absolutely, yes. So still talking about ebooks, right? So within the ebook world, we are seeing a divide with our publishers and libraries, and specifically how the pricing structure exists with our libraries. And this is, again, under the national umbrella, because it's been a national conversation with libraries, how we can continue to support digital given the price structures. So in this graph, you can see how pricing is different for libraries versus the general retail versus Amazon. So for comparison, a print book. So print books, we get a ton of bang for our buck. So there's the retail price, which we get a discount on. And because we go through what are called jobbers. So, you know, they're direct from the publisher, and that's our primary library vendor. And if you spend even more money with them, like we are, we use Baker and Taylor, and they're our contracted primary materials vendor, they'll give us additional discounts. And so for what would be the general cost to the general public, say a $25 book, if you were to go buy it from Dudley's, would be $14 for us. So we win on the print. Where we don't win is when you get to digital. So an ebook, if you were to buy it yourself from, you know, any number of vendors that you choose, would be about $12 if you wanted to just buy it outright and have it in your own personal library. When a library gets an ebook, the first thing I want to say is we don't buy anything. We are borrowing it. We are leasing that title, and we are leasing it at 4 times the cost. So on average, about $45 per title. And again, that's not perpetual. So if that title stays intriguing to the general public for an extended amount of time, say Where the Crawdads Sing, you're buying that title over and over and over again when that lease is expired. And which is massively important to us as we, again, look at the interest in e-audio as it goes up over time. If you were to buy a book off of Audible for your own general collection, which by the way is yours, right? You get to keep that. It never leaves your library, is about $27. We, as a library, again, lease that title for a shorter period of time. This data comes to us, I believe this is from 2022. And it puts the average cost at $70. I would tell you for us, it's closer to $100. So every e-audiobook we buy from or rent from Overdrive is about $100 per copy. The other thing I want to note is that there are certain vendors that have proprietary access. And so what you aren't seeing here is that we can't get access to every digital title or every title that exists digitally. For example, 1.5% of this year's bestsellers are not available to libraries. They are not, the vendor and the publisher would not allow to contract to libraries to get that. That's for ebook. It's up to 15% for e-audio because Audible through Amazon has proprietary access for all of the titles that they contract with their vendors, with their authors. So what are all the issues that we are experiencing with digital purchasing? So I mentioned just now the slide about cost, which is significant for us. I mentioned just now format. So not all of the books that are published every year are available to libraries in a digital format. A lot of it is availability. So one thing that we sometimes forget about now that, like, for example, everybody likes iPhones, right? You walk around and everybody has an iPhone, and then every now and then there's someone like me that says, wait, I have an Android, and you have to say, wait, what? Because we think that devices are universal, but they are absolutely not universal, and not all of every device, just like the apps that you get from the Apple Store or the Play Store, have to be adapted to every single hardware. Not all of the books that are produced digitally work on all devices. So for example, Kindle only works with certain formats. And a lot of the books that people would like for us to get, we can't get it in a Kindle format, which goes to hardware. License terms, I mentioned, we don't buy the copies, we rent them. So every vendor has a somewhat different platform, so we have to monitor it throughout. Typically, it's about every 2 years, we would have to renew a title. So again, thinking about where the crawdads sing, we will have bought that title repeatedly over the last 6 years because of the interest that continues to exist on that title. But there are also other license terms. So some of the rental agreements are that you can only check it out 45 times before having to buy another copy. So again, maybe let's think about the Britney Spears memoir. Like we might be buying that copy, you know, within 6 weeks because we've done that 45 circulation very quickly on that title. So then we have to monitor renewals. So everything, when we buy digitally, we're not just buying new titles over and over again. We actually have to monitor those renewals and see how has the circulation been on that. What's the continued interest? What is the cost benefit analysis in deciding whether or not we want to spend that money on a new title or if we want to spend that money on renewing the access to that title, which takes an excessive amount of staff time. So a lot of people will say, oh, digital, it's a one-click buy, it doesn't take any time, and it takes just as much, if not more, staff time to pay attention to all these license agreements, the formats, how people are using it, how many to buy given the cost of the title, etc. And then the last is some vendors don't even let you buy a leased copy, they do a cost per circ model. So for example, Hoopla and Canopy are a cost per circ model. So our most popular titles, so typically the New York Times bestsellers in audio format can be up to $4 or $5 every time somebody checks that title out, and you get charged per circ as opposed to access to the title. So we have to contain our digital purchasing. I hope that you realize that we can't just buy as many titles digitally as possibly there's demand, because it is so expensive and it takes so much effort to maintain that collection. So we do our best. We have to balance print and digitally equally. And by equally, I have a responsibility to you all to be fiscally responsible with the money that you give me, but I also have to look at the service population that we're serving. And going back to that original slide of what is the use of print versus digital, I can't hyper extend our digital spending because it's more expensive if our user base is more print. And so I have to constantly look at what are the circulations on our print collection versus our digital collection, and are we spending balanced, even if there's an extended, say, holds queue on the e-audio through Overdrive. And I think we do a pretty good job. So the percentage of the book budget that actually goes to digital is very high. We give Overdrive about 33% of our overall collection budget, which is, again, the majority of our leased copies of ebooks and e-audio. We give about 13% to Hoopla, which again is our cost per circ model. And that one is really hard to contain because the more people love it and use it, the more we have to give money to that platform. And so that's one that we love, that it has, I want to say something like 600,000 items on Hoopla, which is incredible. But if people were to check out all 600,000 of those items, we would not be able to afford the platform. So we love it to support our digital collection, but it is one that we have to put some parameters around, which is why you can only check out so many times a month on Hoopla, is maintaining that cost. And then our print gets about 33%. So if you think about that, the percentage of our service population, more of our service population reads print books, but the majority of our budget, or not the majority, but a large percentage of our budget is going towards that digital. So when people ask, why can't you buy more copies? What is happening with my overdrive holds? I'm waiting 6 months. It's because I can't fiscally justify putting more on digital when I know that the majority of our users are print. And so just to kind of explain that, that's that service population. So the service population is based off of unique users. So out of overdrive, there's about, let me grab the exact numbers. Out of overdrive, there's about 25,000 unique users since we started that platform. And we started it before I came. So I'm thinking we've had overdrive for about 15 years. So in the last 15 years, there's been 25,000 unique users on overdrive platform. On Hoopla, there's about 18,000 unique users. And I think we started Hoopla about when I started. So we'll say about last 10 years, about 18,000 unique users. For print, I have to pull that out of our ILS Sierra. And so I am going by how many people have used the library in the last year, or used their patron record in Sierra in the last year. And that is at roughly 58,000 users. So out of the number of people that could use the library, only 12% are using the Overdrive platform, and only 9% are using the Hoopla platform. So for them to get 50% of the budget, I'm happy to do it, and I am really excited about our digital collection, but I, again, cannot justify expanding to fulfill those holds ratios when we have all these other constraints to have to balance as well. Okay, the other national trend that we of course are well aware of is intellectual freedom. So we're still in the national trend section, which is, we haven't even gotten to the state yet. So of course we are well aware that book challenges are on a significant rise across our country, across Oregon, and I already gave you a huge intellectual freedom presentation back in July, so I don't feel the need to fully dive back in, other than this is something that we of course are tracking and paying very close attention to, because it does impact libraries as a whole, and we want to continue to maintain the intellectual freedom of our users, even though challenges could come our way, because we have materials that fall on these lists. As a matter of fact, we have all of the books that fall on those lists because they're popular, and we are a popular lending library, and we have a commitment to give people access to information. And if it's at a level of interest, we are here to buy it. And so more than anything, I just want to acknowledge that intellectual freedom is still an important trend and concern that we're watching in collection development. Okay, so how are we comparing with our Oregon cohorts? So, and again, this data comes from the Oregon Public Library statistics that get reported to the state. They are always a year behind. So we're looking at statistics specifically from 21, 22, even though we just reported 22, 23. So our collections per capita. The first thing I want to point out is, so this is the number of, if every single person in Deschutes County wanted to come to the library and check something out today, how many items could they have? Exactly, how many things could they have? So in Deschutes County for our print collection, we are small. We are below all of our cohorts, and we're below our national expected average. So we're at 1.36. Our hope nationally, or at least with our cohorts, would be to get to 2. My ideal world would be to get to 3. But there's a reason why, and we need our buildings, right? Because physical materials take physical space, and our collection is small for the size of the service population that we're trying to serve. Conversely, we do an incredible job supporting that digital collection. So even though we have all of those concerns and all those constraints and all of those balances that we're trying to manage, our digital collection is the second highest compared to our peers. One thing I do want to point out is this digital collection 5.15 includes both Overdrive and Hoopla. So I mentioned Hoopla has something like 600,000 items that gets to be included in this statistic. If you were to look at just our print and just Overdrive, our print collection is roughly 275,000 items. Our Overdrive collection is about 112,000 items. So it's about half of our print collection, which is still incredibly strong. And so we look at how are those collections performing? So these are first circs again per capita. So if every person were to check out an item, how many items were they checking out over the course of the year? We never know what's happening in Beaverton. I talked to someone at an OLA conference from Beaverton, and I said, what is up with your statistics? And he was like, I don't know, like he was very baffled. So he said, we have good displays. So hopefully our display units are going to help us with that, because we are hoping to really build our displays and, you know, create that experience. I wouldn't take it as like true. He seemed very confused, but maybe our display units will get us somewhere close to Beaverton. But what I want to point out is that there is a direct correlation between collection size and circulation. So the smaller the collection, the less the circulation statistics there are. Part of that is because there's just fewer items. And because there are fewer items, people are finding fewer items that they want to check out. So there is a direct correlation between collection size and the circulation statistics that we see reported to the state. So again, we are low in print per capita, but again, our collection size is low compared to our peers. The other thing that I do want to point out is that this is specifically first circs. So I love statistics because you can tell a story, but I also want to take this moment to say, like, all statistics have a but. I always liked when you had professors and you'd ask for an answer and they'd say it depends. And I feel like statistics, you want it to be black and white, but it's not always. And I'm saying that specifically on this one because e-content, every checkout is considered a first circ. There's no such thing as a renewal on an ebook, right? If you want to get it again, you check it out again. And that's under the first circ statistics. But for a print book, it's only considered a first circ the first time you check it out. We track renewals, totally different. And so I think sometimes I want to add renewals here just to really put apples to apples of like, okay, every time you check out, what is the interest for this item, right? Did you want it enough to keep it? If so, it should be included here, but renewals are not. Okay, so that's our state review. And I want to take us to what we've been doing here at Deschutes over the last year. The first thing I want to mention is really a reminder of our collection development policy. And this goes again back to the intellectual freedom slide and saying we are very aware of what has been happening across the country and the state. And so our collection development policy is one of the most important policies for us to keep current. And within that collection development policy, it talks about what our buying philosophy is. And just to set some, I guess, groundwork on that, nationally or worldwide, something like 2 to 3 million books are published every single year. And that includes self-published. But we, as I just mentioned, our collection size is about 270,000 items. So we are 1% of, or probably less than that, because math is hard, of millions of books that are published every year. And that's our full collection size. We don't get an entirely new collection every year. Every year, we're buying about 50,000 items, and we also withdraw 50,000 items. And so when you get these intellectual freedom concerns, people will say, well, you don't buy every book, so you're already making a subjective judgment on my information access, so why can't you make this other subjective, decision on what to get rid of? And we try, I'm here to say that we try really hard to make sure it's not ever subjective. So within our collection development policy are our criteria as to what we will buy. So we are a popular lending library, that's number one. So we're not an archive, we're not going to buy things that are outdated. We look to community interest, we look to reviews, we look to significance as far as like scientific value, artistic value. Is it gonna have, interest directly to, our programs, our policies? So these are very objective things. We can go to a review and say this title has been reviewed. We can go to a publication date and say this fits within our criteria. We can go to a topic and say this has been one that's checked out quite a bit in our community. And so just should you get concerns about the materials that the library has, I would say remember that we have objective standards that we follow. We also follow our holds ratios and purchase suggestions. So one thing that, again, we've heard is what's happening with my holds? Do you guys monitor your holds? How come I have to wait so long? And I'm here to tell you we definitely monitor our holds. We run a report every week called our purchase alerts or our holds ratio buying. And we have a ratio that we try to maintain for every single one of our collections. If the number of holds goes over the number of copies we have, then we will buy additional copies to fulfill that hold need. And the last is purchase suggestions. Again, we are here to support our community and our community's interests and needs. So if a member of our community, we encourage them to tell us about it and to give us a purchase suggestion. The purchase suggestion does have to follow our objective criteria in our collection development policy, but if it were to fit that criteria, then we will buy the item. Okay, so our year in review. The first thing I want to say is our percentage checked out is going up, which is wonderful. This graph is over just the last year. So we're not looking 15 years back. This is just what has happened in the year of 22-23. And you can see some interesting moments that I want to point out. So the first is there's this nice little dip in January. That is when we closed Redmond. So the Redmond branch, a lot of those items went into storage. And so the access to materials went down and our percentage checked out went down. And then fast forward, we have a nice little jump here in June. And that is when Wayfinder was finished. And so we are seeing an increase from our Wayfinder conversion. And I want to talk to you about that because Wayfinder was the biggest thing that happened in collection development last year. So the first thing is, what are the things that are checking out? So I pull this snapshot data every month, and it is snapshot. So what that means is at the time that I run the statistic, this is how many things are checked out. So there could be so many factors as to that. It could be that there was a blizzard and people didn't return their items. It could be that it was winter break and nobody reads over winter break. Sorry, that's why we have winter reading. You should join. So we have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. But as of December 4th, these were our top searching items. So one thing that's really great is that our games and our hotspots and our library of things, so our realia collections are checking out at a huge rate. And this is pretty consistent. Actually, most of the time, our library of things I don't think I've ever seen a library things less than 50% checked out. A lot of the times it's 100% checked out. Our games, a lot of the time, are 100% checked out. So as we move forward in our buildings, and we're trying to set aside these spaces for these cool new collections, it's because people are loving them. Not at all surprised is that our hot titles and our new books are also checking out at an extraordinarily high rate, which again, as we move forward to our new buildings and we have these awesome lobby display areas to really highlight these hot and new, it's because we're listening to the statistics and are saying, this is what's most important to our community, we need to expand it. Interesting on this list are the kids' audiobook and the story time to go. And I want to say, I know exactly why that is. And it's because we had moved a lot of materials out of Sun River at the time. And so they were not available for checkout. And of the items that are not available for checkout don't get included in the percent checked out, right? So something's in storage or repair, it's not available, so it doesn't get included. And so pretty much everything that was available had been accounted for because of just what was happening with the collection at that time. So Wayfinder. Wayfinder was a massive pull, and I just want to say, you know, thank you to the DPL team for helping make this happen. And as a massive project like this comes to conclusion, there's always the reaction of like, but did it work? Right? Like everyone wants to know, is it successful? Is it working? And so there's a couple different ways that you look at that. There's subjective and there's objective. So subjective is what we're looking at the screen right now. As we finish projects here, we do a process that's called a report of improvement. And within the report of improvement process, we decided to survey our staff and our volunteers and ask them, how did this project go for you? How is Wayfinder? Like, what concerns do you have? What are your reactions so far? So we ran this, we did this survey in September. So they had a chance to live in it for a couple of months. And overall, we got pretty great remarks back. So we got things like, it's a nice system, I like it. Well done, big project. Patrons are getting the hang of it. Every day I'm hearing from customers who are figuring out the categories and like them, thumbs up. I consider the project a wonderful success. This bodes well for the upcoming moves to new and renovated spaces. So that's from our staff and our volunteers. I'm going to share statistics because again, the next part is objective. I want to again talk about how statistics tell a story, but it's always it depends. So this statistic is very much an it depends, and I don't know that we'll be able to know for sure that Wayfinder is working until we are in all of our buildings and all of our collections are out on the floor and the excitement of new buildings has passed. And like, so ask me in 2030 and compare it to 2018 and then we'll know really if it was successful. So correlation does not mean causation. Which means just because these statistics are related to when Wayfinder was finished does not mean that it is Wayfinder that is the reason behind the change in the statistics. And a lot has been happening with our collection this year that could be another cause. So it could be that buildings were closed and a lot of materials were put into storage. And it could be that people are, buildings are open and they're getting really excited about those new buildings. It could be that the items that are in storage were ones that people weren't as interested in because we tried to curate out what would go into storage and keep the most exciting items out. So all of that to say, it's probably too early to tell. But overall, Wayfinder is showing to be a success. So what we're looking at here is the baseline is a zero change. And we're looking specifically at Bend because it's the most stable collection that we have over last year. Redmond went to 10th, Sisters in La Pine were shut down. Sun River then went to, it has also been shut down. And East Bend is very small. So it really makes sense to only look at Bend as the most stable collection that we've had to cut down on some of those other possible causes. So each of these are categories that have had a Wayfinder impact. So for example, out of our Bend adults fiction, we saw an 11% increase at the snapshot that I took in November. For adult nonfiction, so these are just general collection, not the hot and new, we saw an almost 32% increase in adult nonfiction in November when I took this. Kids fiction went up 5%, kids nonfiction, so again, the biggest impact with Wayfinder at about 10%. And then even teens, teen graphic novel, we did add manga, which was a big ask for our community to break out graphic novel and manga. And manga is turning out to be one of our highest circulating collections, and that division with our teens has been so important. What we're seeing a decrease in is DVD, which I am not at all surprised because disc formats are a dying format. So I think we would have seen that decrease anyway. And we didn't see any increase in teens fiction, but again, this is snapshot. I can tell you other months when I've pulled this, it's been high. It's been above the average. And I think this is just because it's a small collection. So any amount of check in or check out greatly impacts that percentage because there's just fewer. So overall, at least right now, my general assessment is that I think Wayfinder is a success, but we will continue to watch and monitor. The other thing we hear is, how did we tell the community about this? How do we tell the community about any of this? And I want to tell you, we have been really busy in the news this year. We have tried really hard to get all of this information out. So I just want to do a shout out to all of the times that tech services has been in the news. This is just last year. So all of the ways that you could have learned or want to learn about Wayfinder, the links are here. Questions about intellectual freedom and how we can better get our community prepared and honor the intellectual freedom of their neighbors and their friends. And then again, Library of Things has always been exciting and fun, but we still hear so many people say, I didn't know the library had that. And we're trying to get the word out. So take these links, share them, pass them along. And this doesn't include social media. This doesn't include the e-newsletters, the event guides, like we get the word out, we try. And I like to finish up with what are the new collections coming your way? So even with Wayfinder, even with the building projects, tech services is always trying to improve. We're always trying to add the collections that are in demand and listen to our community and hear what their wants and needs are. And one of the things that we heard last year that people really wanted was a new collection. So again, thinking hot and new to the library, the ones with the new stickers, exciting in the foyer. Why does it not include all collections? We've heard that many times. Why is there not new large print? Is there not new DVD? Why is there not new graphic novel and new manga? And I'm happy to say that these all exist now. We rolled these out in December. No, we rolled these out in October. And so they're getting expanded, right? You don't just buy 5,000 items, you build it over time. So if you don't necessarily see them in your branches yet, it's because the collections are still building and growing, but they do exist and we're hoping to see it expanded. Also, we hope to see it continue to expand again with our new buildings and our new displays. Library of Things was previously an adult-only collection, so our juvenile cards could not check out Library of Things. And the reason behind that was due to cost and safety, and knowing that we didn't want juvenile cards to get fined for, sometimes hundreds of dollars of a missing item, and that some of our items are not particularly safe. So thing like the sewing machine, for example, is maybe not great for a 6-year-old to check out. So we did hear, though, that there are lots of kits that kids would love. So think STEM, robotics, Legos, And by having our loan rule set that juvenile cards couldn't check out library things, we weren't able to actually buy those kits because we had set these rules in place that said they couldn't. So we're fixing that, and we are gonna roll out we're calling them all ages kits. So they're not specifically saying like kids kits versus adults kits, but all ages kits that are available for any age group. We'll move some of what were previously adult only kits into that. So think like the ukulele, anybody could learn how to play ukulele. And really trying to expand it to an all ages collection. And that should be coming in the next couple of months. And the last, this happened just last week, as all of our hotspots got upgraded from 4G to 5G. So making sure that we get our hotspots at that highest level of technology need across our community. And that is what I have for you. What questions do you have for me?
Congrats on Wayfinder. I thought sure there'd be a revolt, but there wasn't.
You know, one of the things that I knew going in, I had talked to Maricopa, which again is the county that serves the entire Phoenix metro area, and they are on a word-based system. They have 17 branch libraries, and they converted, I want to say back in 2010. And I asked them, what was the response? And the response was, don't look for 100%. And I think you want to make sure that with literally, I mean, even in this room, if we were to do a poll, and I would love to find something we all 100% agree on. So, you know, she said, even now we get some people that don't like it. They've moved to the area and they don't understand it, and they'll put in a comment card. So you have to really look at how are the circulations going? What is the objective behavior? And that's why those statistics are so important, is that the people that are upset are the first ones to complain. The people that are happy very rarely will tell you so. And so we have gotten complaints, but I think that it is more important to say, are we serving our public based off of the statistics that we're seeing, and to stay true to what our vision is and what we know. And we did a huge amount of research that libraries, you know, individuals prefer browsing over known item finding, and we are creating the most substantial browsing option that we can create. And it means that the people that are looking for a known item are often the ones that are saying, well, I don't know where to go to find this blah. But we are seeing people really enjoying that browsing experience. So we kind of knew it going in that there would be some folks that were missing that known item finding. But overall, you know, I think we're seeing that people are enjoying it and finding more materials than they thought they would otherwise.
I think it's really remarkable that the nonfiction category is the category that jumped so kind of.
That's the one I'm most excited about. Yeah.
Loving the pearl clutching people. I mean,
yes,
it's
absolutely. The other thing about that is, out of the remarks that we've gotten, I would say 80% of them have been wondering why we went to genre and fiction. We get very few remarks about the nonfiction. Like, I mean, I couldn't tell you the last one that we heard that was, I don't understand how to use the nonfiction. It's almost always, I don't like genres in my fiction. And we actually knew that going into. We knew that that was a very distinct 50-50 split. People either like genres or they don't. And we decided that it was more important to have an equitable collection and go by genre than it was to go by alpha by author. And by that, what I mean is that there's inequities in the publishing world. And so when you get that name recognition, it's almost always a cis white man that gets the New York Times bestsellers. It's that name recognition. It's Tom Clancy, it's John Grisham, right? And so when you force people to browse, they might experience an author that they otherwise wouldn't have. And so it was how we were able to make fiction more equitable. But the people that love Tom Clancy really just want to go to Tom Clancy. And so, yeah, like I said, the majority of the remarks are, I don't like genre. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. So.
Dive in.
So when you're talking about the inequity in costs in pricing for
Digital, yeah.
digital materials. How do we, how do our contracts with Crook and Jefferson County work? I mean, I assume that we charge them what we get charged, maybe not. Or like, how do they keep a lid on
Yeah.
that borrowing?
Part of our contract agreement with Crook and Jefferson is that we charge them essentially the cost per circ model. So let me first start that they don't have access to our hoopla. So we're talking specifically on Overdrive. So we can run reports out of Overdrive on how many circulations happened on a Crook or Jefferson card over the last year. And then we charge the district a dollar amount for each of those circs. Right now, the dollar amount is actually less, or it's, no, we just looked at it. I think it's very on par with the average. But it is something that we look at regularly to see, are they getting a better deal than us? Are we like overcharging on them? It is something that we try and track, but it's a dollar per circ to them. So it means some titles they might be getting a deal on, and some titles they might be paying, more on. It just sort of comes out in the wash.
So the amount that they pay us each year fluctuates
Based off of how much they're checking, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What we do to kind of help them out is, they will pay, we will charge them in July what they circulated for the whole last year.
Right.
So they can track throughout the year if it's going up.
Right.
Start adjusting their budget accordingly. In theory, usually they're just shocked every year when we do it, but
Right.
because it just keeps going up. I will say, I think Brooke is looking at moving to the Sage system, or working with some other cooperative.
One of the east, they already are part of this age system. So.
Okay.
So looking to move away from our digital,
To somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that's how.
And I guess my biggest question, I have another minor one. Have holds ratios on physical items increased over time? What's been?
They have not, so, well, I don't know, I can't speak to before my time here. But in the last 10 years, we have not changed the holds ratios on print. So the print holds ratio is 3-to-1.
Okay.
Digital does change up and down as we approach our budget every year. So kind of every year we look at how much money are we spending towards digital, how do we contain that buying, and we'll relook at how we objectively make our decisions on renewals, how we objectively make our decisions on purchase suggestions, and how we can manage those holds ratios given the money that we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I guess my biggest question is, part of the bond is a substantial increase in collection. And so we have this opportunity. What is maybe this is a completely separate presentation, but what is our plan to spend that money? Like, how do you take a big chunk of money and improve the collection?
Yeah.
Because it's not just like, oh, we're gonna buy a whole bunch of books this year. So this is the bestseller, so we're gonna have.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
in some cases, we are going to buy a whole bunch of books this year. When
Yeah.
we open a new building.
Right, well, yeah, I know we're gonna be, but it's not like, these are the hot bestsellers this year, so we're gonna end up with 300 copies of John
Yeah.
Clancy.
Yeah, so
we have-
I'll start with the easy and then I'll expand to the more complicated.
Yeah.
So the first is that each of our branches, including Sisters in La Pine, have already received their opening day collections. So every one of our branches will get an opening day collection as their branch opens. So Sisters in La Pine focused on those hot and new. So they got a lot of expanded hot and new at those buildings. Sun River will be nearly identical with their hot and new profile. Redmond, which we're working on right now, and let me clarify too, opening day collections are a vendor supported process or service that our vendors provide. So you can contract with your primary materials vendor and they can help with profiles of what it is that you're trying to buy. So you can say, I'm trying to expand the cooking collection. And then I want publication dates over the last 5 years, and they'll send us a selection cart. And we'll go through that selection cart and pick out titles just for cooking and then send them back to them. And we'll do that repeatedly, topic by topic, at whatever level of granularity we want to build that collection. So we're actually working on doing Redmond's right now. So Redmond will get a lot of hot and new, but we'll also get a lot of infill to the rest of the collection. So really just that expanded quantity. Redmond doesn't need as much because again, a lot of their collection is in storage. And so kind of grabbing their items out of storage and then infilling with the ODC. When we get to Central, we are going to do nearly the exact same thing, but at a massive level. So we are probably buying, my guess right now is about 100,000 items for Central in one stop. So in that opening day collection. That said, and I think the question that you're asking is what happens after the projects are done? So how is the collection development budget going to change now that we're maintaining, 7 buildings and this expanded collection? And how are we going to manage the collection development budget with hopefully a massive increase in our collections and the holds ratios and all that? And that's going to be with Todd as he develops his budget every year. And he'll come to you all as the budget committee. I will probably be presenting to him and or you and ask for a collection increase. That would be every year annual collection increase based off of the expanded size of the collection. But that's gonna go into those like 5-year projections that Todd looks at how to support it.
Yeah, I guess and I'm obviously, I'm not a librarian, I'm not an expert like you are. But it seems like if we do this on a building by building basis and everybody says, well, I want my share of hot and new. And we have a floating collection, so we replicate that experience up with a ton of hot and new. But do we also have, when you talk about infill, how do we identify what infill looks like? And like, is this an opportunity to increase the depth of the collection?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So for each of our branches, we get statistics back from Miller Hull that tell us what the size is of each area in the collection. So we'll compare that to what we have. So like for Redmond, for example, I'll be able to compare how much shelving space we have for adult fiction versus how many items we have for already set aside for adult fiction, and then we'll buy the gap in quantities. And so when we get to Central, we'll know exactly how many items we're trying to buy for each area of the collection. So it won't just be hot and new at that point. It'll be, like you said, a larger breadth of collection rather than just multiple copies of the same thing.
Right, and I mean, it's like here's an example, and I'll shut up after this. In trying to get, say, more classic books, and I'm not talking about just the classics, but older books that have literary merit, and you guys know whether those circ or not, so maybe they don't circ, so maybe it's pointless. But if somebody says, well, I really want to read Stoic philosophy, or I want to read whatever it is, do we have a variety of books within our collection to support those interests and how do we know what people's interests are?
Right.
If it's not there, how do we know where the gaps are?
That's where we really rely on that collection development policy of what are we trying to accomplish with our collections. And we consider ourselves a popular lending library, as I mentioned. So we probably wouldn't have, the classics, unless the classics were checking out. And actually, we do have the classics, because they do check out, because they're school projects.
Yeah.
But like, you know, if someone wanted to do research on, you know, Stoic philosophy, that would be where we would probably turn them to interlibrary loan.
Okay.
But we do check with interlibrary loan. From time to time, they'll send us stuff, like we've gotten 3 requests for this title. So we get kind of a temperature check from them on what is being asked through interlibrary loan. We also have, it's on our internal SharePoint, a place where people can tell us where there are gaps in our collection. So they'll say, you have this series, but you're missing, you know, 3 or 4. And so we'll be able to re-infill on series. There are some authors that we know are incredibly prolific that they never lose interest. So I'm thinking like Dean Koontz and Stephen King. Like, we probably don't have Stephen King's novels from the 80s or 90s right now because our space is limited, but that might be an opportunity for us to go back and look at some of those really prolific authors and infill like everything they've bought. And that would fall within that popular lending sphere. So those are all the things that we'll talk about and look at when we build our opening day profiles with Baker and Taylor.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you, that answered.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think ALA took it to court on the ebooks and it was overturned. Is there any thought of going back on that?
I think it was actually in Maryland. So the Maryland Library Association brought the lawsuit forward to whoever the federal, what is it? The federal agency that manages commerce. Help me with it, but they brought a lawsuit to, you know, the equal.
Federal Trade Commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert, I needed you. And they did not win. And so right now it would take another library somewhere to try and do a suit within their state. I heard Pennsylvania was kind of looking at it, but I haven't heard.
Seems like that would be an ALA type overall look at it.
I would have to know more about the ALA governance. Yeah.
Thank you. Great report. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And Inez, questions?
No questions, but Emily, thank you so much for your information. I get questions from many people about print versus digital. So your information that you presented will be very helpful in answering their questions. And again, great presentation. Thank you.
You are welcome. And anytime I can help you answer questions with people that ask, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
You have the remote clicker.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, moving on to collection development, administrative rules. What's that?
Yes, so again, a lot of what Emily just covered kind of fits in with this. This is one of the longest board policies, so I'm definitely not going to go through point by point. But I will point out that there's a reason it's the longest board policy, and that is it's designed to mirror our collection development administrative rule, because any request for reconsideration can be appealed to the library board. And so this is kind of the means for you to have a very thorough policy as well. So I'm going to leave it to see if you have any questions on it. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it through. But my interpretation is that we are in compliance with this policy.
Questions?
I had one question. I know in talking about intellectual freedom things at ALA and talking about challenges, some libraries were putting restrictions on the number of titles that could be included in a challenge, and it doesn't, I didn't see that in here, but I might have missed it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And maybe I'll just stand back. I can't see you all and I'm sitting where I'm at, so I just want to be able to make eye contact. So we have the collection development admin rule, and a subset to that is a request for reconsideration admin rule, and actually those criteria are in that reconsideration portion. So that was updated this year. So the updates that we added to that reconsideration admin rule were that you could only submit one title on each individual form. So every form was intended for just one title. That you were expected to only submit one form per month. So it's not intended for somebody to come and challenge the entire collection, right? The intention is that an individual found one title that they were uncomfortable with, and it would be on a case-by-case basis. We included that a form could not be submitted on behalf of an organization. So for example, Moms for Liberty, it would be an individual that is having an individual concern. And that they had to be a Deschutes resident partner. So they have to live within our county and part of our library system. Yeah. Thank you. Just gonna keep standing. There's questions, not that I'm doing.
One correction I will add to this, because I wrote this right before Christmas. We did have one request for reconsideration that came in right at the very end of the year. And that was the only one we had over the last year.
Was that dealt with at the library level?
Yes.
The manager?
Yes, so that went back to it went to me. Which what I do is, you'll see this policy, is I hand it over to Emily and her team. They get me back information in the book, justifications for why we have it, and then I get back with a decision to. And in this case, they had a request from the kids area to a parenting collection or an adult collection. Denied that. And those were the cases that they can bring that to the board. So that is a possibility, since it's a newer one, that could happen. It doesn't seem to be related to anything related to a campaign to do anything, more of an individual.
Any other questions? EMS for anybody? Do we have a vote for the collection development?
The library district is in compliance with the collection development executive limitations policy.
Second. All those in favor? Motion passes.
Agenda piece, Chantal has a 3:30 meeting.
Okay.
Which I checked to see if we can get that presentation in now, or if you want us to postpone it to the next meeting. It's the art.
It's pretty hard. It's pretty. It's not collection development. This is a lighter topic.
And just add that this is an educational presentation. I had a couple of board members ask about what are we doing for art buildings? Just to encourage you, if there are other things about the library that you'd like to know about, please let me know. We'll get those in this education. There it is. There we go.
Okay, so yes, we for about a year, maybe a year and a half now, we have compiled an art committee to consider the purchase of art in our libraries. And this is a little bit different than what we've been doing for like the last 25 years, where we've had art committees in our different libraries across the county. Sometimes it was part of the Friends group, etc. This is a much more kind of concerted effort to look at all of the art within all of Deschutes County. I think it's a much better system, because our hope and desire is to eventually have somewhat of a rotating art collection. And that can benefit and add new inspiration in our libraries. Not all pieces will be able to rotate. We have a couple that you'll see here at the end that are quite large and they won't be able to move around. But we do have some art that. So we took some time, about 3 months as a group, to consider, like, why do we have? So what is the advantage for our communities? And we believe that it's really a pathway of healing. That it helps with kind of reflecting back on history, reminding us of our connection with one another, but also with nature. And then it also, art can inspire a sense of justice and challenge our certainty. So art's pretty powerful. It can do a lot of things. And we think that in a public space like a library, it can really have great benefit to the community that may not otherwise have access to art as well. The committee discussed that what they want to happen with the art that we choose is that it provokes inquiry, it inspires imagination, and speaks again to that connection between another, but also the water and the land and the region's diverse communities. So they were pretty specific about looking at the impact that we would like to make. Art in our libraries will be diverse in a multitude of ways. So we hope to have diverse artists creating the art, and also a diversity in the type of art that we include, such as like the painting, the printmaking, glass, fiber, digital photography, etc. And that the art is also diverse in its location, both in our buildings and outside our buildings. And so that it creates kind of like unexpected surprises sometimes, which I think is always a good way to inspire people. We put together a group of members from across Deschutes County, as well as members in the Northwest. So I've listed here for you the different committee members, so we meet monthly. So we have Matt Alvarez and Ruth Vallejo, who are our architects, and they're both based out of Seattle. We have Kathy DeBone, who is in La Pine. Jason Graham, he's also known as Mowo or Mosley Wada. He is based in Redmond, and he's a co-chair of this. Bill Hoppy, he's a well-known internationally acclaimed artist that's based in Bend. He used to teach at COCC. Kato Hagen is the other co-chair working with Jason and me closely. And she's an artist, and she also ran Art Central for 25 years. She was involved with the Portland Art Museum for years, decades. So she's based in Sisters. And then Jesse Pemberton, who's a sculptor, he's based in Sun River. Carolyn Platt is a painter, she's based in Sisters. And Eric Sand, he runs the Redmond Chamber, and he's wonderfully connected and always been involved in art in Redmond, and so we've included him. I am involved in it as well, and then a woman named Tammy Jo Wilson, who heads up Lewis and Clark College's art program. She's also very involved in 2 art galleries in Portland, and she's been a wonderful addition too, just to kind of bring in an urban perspective for us. Any questions on anything I've covered? So when we were thinking about how do we go about this process, Kate, from her experience of working with the Portland Art Museum and the other artists, said that the best approach would probably to do this as an online system where we invite artists, and we've done advertising across all of the Northwest, including Montana and Colorado. So we've been pretty much like west of the Rockies because we wanted to get the biggest group of artists that we could. But we are giving special consideration to our local Deschutes County artists, and then to our Oregon artists, and then to Washington. So we are putting a little bit of, not favoritism, but more weight on those people who are more regionally part of Deschutes County and Oregon. So what we're doing is we're working with a portal called Cafe. It's actually a call for entries. It's very well known across the nation. They get thousands of artists involved and all good artists understand that this is the process to go to. So what we've done is we're building a roster of qualified artists for consideration across all the libraries. Because again, we're thinking of this as a district-wide collection. And then we get together as a team monthly, we review and vote on the art that has been submitted. And then we invite the artists that we select monthly. So we probably have gone through at least more than 500 artists that we've looked at their work and analyzed it and then voted yes or no or maybe. And then we go back and we vote on the maybes and the yeses and get it down to all yeses. And then we invite them to submit proposals to us. And again, we don't ask them to be so specific about the libraries. And that has worked out really well because then we can consider knowing our communities, what we believe is best. So instead of the artists thinking that they know our communities, we would rather help select that with the whole library district in mind. Our funding, I know that if you've been paying attention to Greg's budget over time, that we have allocated 1% of the bricks and mortar construction of our building projects to go towards art. And this is part of, well, we're following the same statute that the state of Oregon follows, where it's 1% of public art. So we're just right in line with that. So that's been a good model for us. The funding, if you're curious, we're at about $1.4 million that we hope to spend for art across Deschutes County. And I can give you a breakdown if you're interested in that. The smaller libraries like Lapine, Sisters, and Sun River are each allocated right now about $30,000. Downtown Bend, because it is a remodel, and that's because those are remodels and not, so there'll be a little bit less, plus the size of that building. So there's less construction going on, right? So their overall budgets are going to be smaller than, let's say, like Redmond. So Downtown Bend is $130,000 will be allocated. Redmond is $300,000. And then the central library is $900,000. Perspective. Okay, now kind of the fun part. So we have a long way to go, but I wanted to share with you 4 artists that we have selected and who are actively involved right now in working on art for our buildings. And their names are there. Christy Kuhn, and she's been selected to do the Sisters art. And I'm just showing you who we have hired like right now, but we will be adding more art to Sisters. So additional art to Lapine and to Sun River and Redmond and the Central Library. Okay, so this is just one artist, but more will be coming too. So here's what we have done in Sisters with an artist named Christy Kuhn. I know some of you were at the art reception that we put on December 16th, and I hope we're able to hear her wonderful presentation. She's a fiber and textile artist, which fits really well, we believed, in Sisters. And Her art is beautiful. It's representing the Metolius River and those are trees and what we do is we don't dictate, of course, what the artist is creating. We just allow them to understand the, you know, again, that's why we are selected based on what we're seeing in their art and how we believe it could reflect like the community of sisters, but this could also reflect everywhere in Deschutes County because of the river and trees, etc. Her work, though, had a good dual purpose in that we were needing some acoustic element in the sisters' meeting room. And the architects had selected kind of a wood slat wall to be there. And we went in and said, you know, could we change that out? And instead of wood slat, could we be adding some kind of fiber textile art in its place? Because that's really who the community of sisters is. And it's a lot prettier than what we were seeing. And so this is a wonderful acoustic element for that room. So we're really happy with that. Next artist is Tori Corliss. So this is the art that is currently in the East Bend Library. So I think Cynthia, you were wondering what that looked like. He's a glass painter. And so when the art committee was looking at this and realizing that we are keeping the East Bend Library open for a couple more years, whatever the board ends up deciding, but that this piece was always intended somewhat to travel, and we haven't done so. And so we thought this is a great opportunity for it to get into the Lapine community. And the Lapine representative, Kathy DeBone, happens to really enjoy Tori Corliss's work. And so she shared it with a number of people down in Lapine, and they were really interested in having this art travel to Lapine. So as soon as we can make this happen, maybe in March or April, we would be removing this art, relocating it to the Lapine building. And then in the place of where this art was, at least on 2 of the walls in the children's area, we'll be replacing it with the graphic element that you all, I think, have now seen in Lapine and Sisters, the really cute graphic wallpaper. And the artists who are doing that graphic work, they are doing it specifically for that library. So they're all a tiny bit unique and different for each of the locations. So that's going to be fun to see. So East Bend will have something in return for taking this away, but they are getting something. The next artist is in Sun River, and I'm not doing this justice at all. So this artist's name is Judy Hoynes. She's lived in Bend about 45 years. She's really talented, and she does acrylic, watercolor, and mixed media. And her mixed media is really interesting. It's very textural, so she'll be adding elements like wood elements or linen on top of her painting. And we really liked that textural element and thought that this would be beautiful, not this specific one, I'm just giving you a sample, but in the Sun River area, in the Sun River Library, in the fireplace area. And we actually have 3 kind of walls to work with. So she will be creating an original piece of work for that space and is dying to get in to look at it. So we've sent her some photos, but she really wants to get into that space whenever she can. And so she'll be developing that in Sun River. Okay, then kind of the granddaddy who we are just, I feel like we have been like blessed by the art angels from above. This is an artist named John Brade. He's a Seattle-based artist, and he does major installations all around the world. So he's been in Ethiopia, he's been in Norway, Italy, everywhere, like in many places in America. I had seen his work when I was coming up the escalator in the Seattle airport about 2 years ago. And then Jason Graham had seen his work at OSU, and Kato Hagen had seen his work at the Seattle Art Museum. And all 3 of us had written down his name like, wow, he'd be amazing to get. And we got him. So we're really excited to be working with him. Aside from his immense talent, what I really love about John's process is that he includes the community at all levels in the creation of his work. So the piece that he did in the Seattle airport, he had about 300 people, just everyday people that don't have any artistic ability, walk into his studio and help him create and craft the actual art piece. And he's really excited to do the same for us in Deschutes County. We've asked him to do a piece in the Redmond Library above where the stair will be upstairs in Redmond. And then another piece in the lobby of the Central Library. And he's visited us twice. He's coming out again in another 2 weeks to really deepen his understanding of the culture of Central Oregon, the socioeconomics of Central Oregon, our plants, how things grow here, the water levels here. Like he studies every single thing, the history. He'll be meeting with the local Native Americans, the tribes of Warm Springs. He digs deep. And he's also going to climb our mountains, like he's climbing the South Sister in the middle of winter. He wants to get a full perspective of the Central Oregon region, and he goes, again, really deep in that way. So we're just really excited to see what he comes up with. He should have, for the Redmond Library, his first ideas will be on just scratches on a piece of paper for us next week. And then if we're in some agreement with it, he will begin to develop something more earnestly and get us, within like 2 months, we'll have kind of a design. And then he'll need to get going on the creation of it to get it installed by October. So right after the Redmond Library opens, or hopefully. So that's where we kind of are right now. Yeah. You guys have yeah, to have his caliber, but really Christy Kuhn, the gal that did the sisters piece, her caliber, like these are very good artists that we've selected, and we're really, really excited that they're willing to work with us and that they're willing to take less money and to be very deeply involved in the communities and
all the other in sisters in particular, just walking around and seeing the print art
yes,
was just incredible. And I think putting together this group of people who really are discerning, and I mean, it's really a thoughtful curation process, and I mean, the results so far have just been stunning.
yes. Thank you. Yeah, we're happy with it. And the sisters is very much an art community. And so when we opened with their wall, we heard about it.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of really talented artists and sisters. And so it just so happened that Kate is very well connected, and this other woman, Carolyn Platt, whose husband's an artist and she's an artist with the community. And the people said, how about if we loan for now this art just to see how it lives in the building, and we can transfer out some pieces just so people start to feel like it feels like home again for sisters. So that's what we're doing.
Okay.
But like the Randy Redfield piece above the fireplace, we're really interested in purchasing that piece.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at what we would want to consider. And so this has been good. It kind of is like trying on a few dresses and deciding which one you want and live with it for a bit, and then you can make a decision before you buy. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great. Thank you. Yeah, it's neat to see unique pieces of art that are coming into our buildings.
Yeah. And again, I've just shown you 4, but we will have more art in Redmond. In Sun River, we hope to have an exterior piece, a sculpture of some type. And you'll have the funds to do that with chip shooting piece inside and have a sculpture outside. So yeah, more to come. Before I run off, I do want to tell you because I know, Anne, you're going to talk about author maybe, and I just want to make sure you all have the dates.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
so Anne Lamott, the author Anne Lamott is coming February 2nd. And then Stephanie Land, she wrote the book Made and Now Class, is coming Friday, March 1st. And then Robin Wall Kimmer, she wrote Fabulous but Great and Sweetgrass, is coming Thursday, May 16th. That's Sarah. Anyway, those are
Yes.
And do you have anything?
No, I'm just really excited. I was able to be at the sisters presentation for her fiber art, and that is just spectacular. Yeah, it adds a great deal to the library.
And it actually matches things, which we didn't have any control over that, but it actually like really links in well to the kids area, which you can see in the meeting room. It's all right there. So.
And her explanation of it just added so much to the appreciation of how intricate that piece is. I mean, I just, it was really great.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me jump in.
Communication and support back into there.
Yes, so that is, this is a one specific policy that the board has, that the board is elected to monitor itself, so I have no comments on it. Just have read the policy, and this is one we postponed from December meeting as well, that's why the date is still off on that. So really, it's open to you, your interpretation.
Any comments, questions?
Well, just to provide some context around this. This used to be, there are, in Carver's policies, there are different mechanisms for what basis we use to decide whether or not this policy is being met. And it used to be that the director was telling us how well they were doing on this, which seemed a little, didn't make a lot of sense to us. And so in this case, you know, it's kind of like, how well do we feel like Todd is doing? I mean, this is sort of the epitome of the no surprises thing that Margot, our management consultant, always brings up. Have we felt surprised by things during the year? Have we felt like we're getting the full story on what's going on in the district? Are there things that we haven't felt well informed on? Or do we feel like Todd is providing us with timely information at the right level for our concern, and do we have the information we need to interact with the public? And I just want to say that I feel like this aspect of Todd's job over the past, well, not just this year, but previous years, has really been significant. That he's had a lot of things that he's needed to keep us posted on, because we've got a lot going on. There's a lot of work being done. And some challenges like in Lapine, and I just feel like he's done an exceptional job of keeping us informed on what's happening. I've never felt surprised. I've always felt like I had the information that I needed to answer questions when the public came to me, or if I haven't had the information right at my fingertips, I felt like I've been able to get it quickly and get back to the person, because like Ann said, I mean, people ask me things all the time. I've gotten questions on Wayfinder, I've got all kinds of questions, and I've always gotten like super timely responses. So I think, in my opinion, he's done a good job.
I have to say, my husband, he reads the newspaper every day religiously, and he'll come in and he'll say, did you know this? I'm, yeah. As you say, never surprised, and that's exactly, I cannot think of a single time that a person has come and asked me about an issue, or that my husband's told me about an issue that's been in the news that we haven't already known about, so I think you do an excellent job of keeping us informed.
I always feel like I can just call and see. Hey,
I just want to say, I think today's meeting was a good example of Todd keeping us informed. I know he's been sending us emails on the what's coming out of Josephine County, but then to bring it to the board and have, you know, Emily there as far and Eric and Buzzy as well, you know, just to add that piece to our meeting. I think Todd's doing a good job to you know, give us as much information as he has and brings that to us in a timely manner.
good.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. And my philosophy is always, if I was on the board, what would I want to know? I will say a challenge for me now is the bulletin, because I read it through the mail. And so usually I'm reading it 3 days after it's come out. And so I may not be alerting you. They had a great article where they interviewed Greg, and I found out about it because the TV station called about it. And then I had to go find it. So I am a little slow on the moment.
Well, the bulletin is a little slow. Well, I would move that the library district is in compliance with the communication and support to the board executive limitations policy.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Great. We are up to the latest library minutes.
Okay, one thing that I've probably heard of the Oprah bump or Oprah effect. We now have the train man effect. And I'll let Lynn kind of jump in, but she's been kind of tracking it, and having the train man come has beyond getting people interested in coming down to the library, that's a big impact on their circulation. Yeah.
Yeah, I just did a quick look at it, since this is like really the first year we've been stable with our circulation numbers, and it does bump, his visits during the week that he's here bumps our circulation per day up to almost up 500 circulations. These are first service. So on the days that he's here, we're close to 2,000 items almost every day he's here. So it does have an impact. So that, you know, for as much as the staff works and our volunteers work, and there's a lot of activity going on in the building, it does have an impact. So it's kind of a nice little bump in December, when normally that's kind of a slow month for us because of the holidays. So
7,000 people.
yeah,
Wow.
thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. 7 days.
Late notice for you, but Sisters in Lapine the Sun River and Lapine are closed due to snow today. And then the other thing, just to give you a heads up, because one other, unlike a direct inspection, every other year, the board gets a third party that comes and gives you a summary of an evaluation of me. And so that's coming in February. So that's the annual meeting where you review my performance, and we will have HR answers. It's been conducting a Director 360, and we'll be presenting that report to you. So, and that is my news.
Alrighty, Library Foundation.
Well, you heard Chantal, spoke so eloquently. The ticket sales for author have been strong so far, and so they start out with just the season ticket sales for the first month or so, and those have been above previous levels for these 3 authors. And now they've opened up ticket sales for the individual authors, so in case you can't go to see all 3. And I would encourage you to come if you've never been to one of these. They're fantastic and they're a great way for the foundation to raise money for our library system. And I think they really enhance the cultural landscape of Deschutes County. I have lived here for many decades and the thought of authors of this caliber coming to our community is just amazing to me still. So, and these are three who are gonna be very different, very interesting authors.
Sorry, one quick note for you. I did put out the schedule of upcoming conferences. The Public Library Association meets every other year. And I could not find where 2026 is gonna be, but just,
San Diego.
oh, is it? Okay. There you
They're
go.
meeting in San Diego?
Yeah, in 26. In 26, Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
So, to help me budget wise, I don't need just a quick email. If you are interested in any, in the next fiscal year, that'll just help me to kind of calculate where we should put our budget. So really looking at July 1, 24 through June 30th, 25. Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty, any critical communications that we might have missed?
I did not identify any.
Self-review of the meeting. And Ness, we'll start with you.
Okay, I think it was a very good meeting. We covered a lot of territory. Robert and Greg, again, good information on our facilities. I appreciate all the updates. As I said before, the presentation by Emily, Buzzy, and Eric was very helpful. I'm really looking forward to some direction and definition from SDAO and the DOJ going forward, because I know this issue is not going to disappear. And then again, Emily, thank you so much for your presentation. I would like a copy of your slides, if we could do that. As I said, I'm always getting questions about that budgeting for digital versus print, and why can't we have more ebooks and more audiobooks? And so your data there is very helpful in responding to those questions. So thank you.
You're welcome. And yes, you'll get slides. Thank you. Lori, again. Yes,
Yeah.
up to you.
We'll have slides of all the presentations.
Great, thank you.
And Mac?
Everything that Ann Ness just said. No, I think it's a very informative meeting and I thank you for. I didn't mean to ask so many questions, but Emily's presentation just always sparks lots of questions. And it was excellent as usual. And I just want to thank you again for all your work that you do on behalf of OLA for the Intellectual Freedom Committee, because your ability to communicate so concisely and so clearly on that important issue is not just a benefit to the people of Deschutes County, but the entire state. I really commend you for all your work, and I know it's a lot of extra, but it's vitally important to you. But yeah, I really appreciate all the facilities information. I appreciate the depth that you went through to explain the situation, because we do get questions, and so to be able to respond accurately to people's concerns is really important, and you guys lead us through those issues in a very clear way, so thank you. And the whole Josephine County situation, all that information is great too, so thanks for a second.
Basically, the two of you said everything. I really appreciate all the reports, and really that goes to you, Todd, because you could probably sit here and tell us all the stuff they do, but I really appreciate hearing from all of them. So I have an announcement to make. My husband and I, a couple of years ago, started thinking about, okay, as we're getting older, we need to live one of our daughters, we have a daughter who lives in Denver and one in Portland and one's a point anyway. So we started kind of narrowing it down and started looking for houses, kind of, sort of. And perfect house that fit checked off all of our boxes came available to us in Central Point. So we actually purchased the house. We are putting our house on the market next month. So I will be at the February meeting, possibly the March meeting, but I wanted to let everybody know that taking applications for positions. A couple of people knew about this and told me, oh, I'm interested. And I said, well, the library puts out that application for stuff. Sorry.
And everyone said all the permanent things, appreciate everything you guys did and your passion. Freedom to. Thanks to all of you.
I do have a critical communication.
Oh.
Now. So, just looking at your board vacancy policy, at the direction of the board president, I will start advertising for a vacant position or upcoming vacant position. Let's see, tell me.
And should I tell you
Tell me.
now?
Yeah.
Based on that timeline, I think that will give us some time to get it posted, people time a chance to see the posting, advertise it, and get information back. And just so you know what happens there is you'll get written applications from people. The board will review the applications and select which ones you want to interview. And that will be, sorry, Cynthia, that will be everybody but you gets to vote on that. And so we'll start looking at a timeline. It sounds like we would be aiming for March to at least have those interviews. Does that sound about right? Okay, and I'm really sorry that we're doing this. I'm happy for you, but sorry for us.
I'm sorry, I really enjoyed my time on the board. It's been wonderful. And as I said, it just was a process that we were kind of going through without any deadlines or anything. And then this house came on the market and was like, hey, it fit everything Bill wanted, it fit everything I wanted, so I'd be better jumping.
Well, we expect you to at least take a trip up to see the open.
Oh, well, I want to be included I'll be here, of course, when they break the ground for Central, but I do want to be included when the Red Library reopens. So.
Anybody have anything else?
Oh, I will say, in pencil, put down, we're aiming for March 9th, or was it 9th?
March 9th.
For the groundbreaking for Central.
Was that what it is, March 9th?
Yeah, and again, put in pencil because
Right.
we have some logistics to do, and figure out a way to get people onto that property. So that may change, but right now that's what we're kind of aiming for. And we don't know about snowstorms.
Yeah. I think it will also be more of a invite list versus everybody because of the site condition.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get to.
Do we get a little shovel to do?
Just like we did, yes,
Yeah.
that red. We just can't do the wide open invitation to the community like we did in Redmond, where they could just walk in.
Yeah.
Anybody else have it? Adjourn this meeting.
Right,
Thank you. Boy.
stay warm, man.
Yeah. Hope you can get out to the roads.
I'll help I can get home.
Yeah, well, be careful driving.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.